In the near future, virtual reality games became incredibly popular around the world. Because of this, many development companies jumped on the bandwagon to create such projects. As a result, the competition between them became increasingly fierce over time. Large companies were constantly trying to create the highest quality game possible. Virtual Reality Game Development Office. The young man was one of those who created such projects with the support of artificial intelligence. The virtual girl greeted the gentleman. From now on, she would be helping him. The girl said she could be called Gaia. She was artificial intelligence. The chief developer of Napalm Games was Minchul. Gaia was the most advanced artificial intelligence in the world. So Minchul and Gaia began creating games together. In the early stages of development, they encountered many system errors, bugs, and other difficulties. They had to go through a difficult journey to overcome all these obstacles. Soon, with Gaia's help, Minchul was able to spread his creative wings freely. Finally, they will create a game that future users will call truly high quality. It would be the best virtual reality MMORPG. He managed to create Wings Online. Gaia asked the gentleman what would happen to her when they finished the game. Minchul replied that she would be the goddess of this place. The young man asked Gaia to take care of this world. The artificial intelligence noted that in that case, they would soon have to say goodbye. Minchul said that Gaia could contact him at any time if she wanted to. Many other projects would be created in the future. Gaia replied that she would hardly be able to help with them, as she would be busy here. Minchul agreed. She would indeed have a lot of work to do if she started managing the entire game. Gaia said that one day, when this world comes to an end, she wants him to stay with her, just like now. Minchul opened his eyes and clearly imagined what the next major update should be. It had been a long time since Napalm Group launched Wings Online. 5 whole years. Yoon Ha-soo, CEO of Napalm Group's commercial department, said that they had a stable number of players, but recently it had started to decline. As a result, sales had also declined. Therefore, the commercial department proposed adding an in-game payment system in the 6th season update. Minchul was indignant. Why all of a sudden? Who would allow them to add it? Yoon Ha-soo replied that it was all for the good of the company. Minchul said that if that was the case, then the other executives should agree to sell their shares in the company at the end of the year. Right? Did everyone really think that this would raise their price even slightly? Minchul said that they would be obliged to release a server upgrade, but if the plan is just to turn the game into a banal cash cow, then wholesale sales of shares after a short-term rise will ultimately hurt the company even more. The game will come to an end, and the balance between small investments will collapse. Does the CEO know how many companies have gone bankrupt for the same reason? Minchul stated that as long as he works here, there will be no in-game payment system. The developer added that he would not allow the game he created to be turned into a scam. The young man said that all those who disagree can, if they wish, cooperate and fire him. But will they have the courage to do so? If not, they cannot hope that he will change his mind. One of those present noted that they had only just begun the meeting, and it had already ended in an argument. But there was nothing they could do. After all, Minchul was the creator of the game. However, it was unacceptable to behave in this manner. The CEO of the commercial department said that they would try to change Minchul's mind. Minchul left the conference room and headed for the exit of the office building. He thought that the chairman's son was acting too suspiciously. 3 days passed. Wings Online, Main Square. The townspeople lived their normal lives and followed their usual routes. One character caught the attention of those present. What was wrong with him? The young man was asking healers for help. He was clearly unwell. His skin had turned black and he fell to his knees from exhaustion. Could he have been poisoned? He needed to be purified. Where were the healers? A girl stepped out of the crowd and said she would help him. She had a staff ready in her hand. Energy purification was activated, removing negative statuses from the target. However, it was already too late to help, and the sick player fell apart. Those present were frightened. Was he dead? What kind of status was that? Why did he turn to dust? Napalm Corporation Headquarters. Advertisement for the anticipated 6th update of Wings Online. Lee Dong-ha, head of the Quality Assurance Department, said that the community bulletin board was literally exploding. It seems that an incurable epidemic is spreading in the game. However, the problem is that if you die, your account and character disappear forever. The developer said that he will check everything now. The problem should not be serious, so there is no need to worry. They will restore accounts once he has completed a full check. Lee Dong-ha noted that it will likely not be easy to fix this, and players are going crazy. The system offered to select the mode that the developer wanted to access. Gamer Master mode was selected. Developer. The character Minchul entered the game. The young man greeted all the players and introduced himself. He is the Gamer Master Shrimp. Those present were frightened. What is he doing here? Why isn't he fixing the game? Shrimp said that they were currently trying to figure out the cause of the current problem and fix it as quickly as possible. The players were puzzled. How could a character completely disappear? They had to make him come back. Shrimp said that an urgent investigation would be conducted. Users' accounts and characters would return after the investigation was complete, and they would be restored. The Game Master activated the character shutdown. The city became empty. Minchul noted that it was finally quiet. The developer realized that this was the epidemic status he had created. It turned out that everything was much more serious than he had imagined. Gaia asked why the gentleman was conducting such a terrible experiment. Minchul replied that it was a tribute to classic games. More specifically, the most famous MMORPG of the 2000s. There was a bug in it that caused the epidemic. Gaia asked, "An epidemic right in the middle of the game?" Minchul nodded affirmatively. The problem became so serious that official documents were even published about it. Minchul said that he had not seen similar classic events in other modern projects. Therefore, he decided to recreate it in this game. However, the problem was that it became a fatal bug that could not be controlled by the in-game system. Minchul noted that it was a bit wasteful, but there was nothing he could do about it. The developer ordered Gaia to delete all data. Recalling this conversation, Minchul thought that everything should have disappeared by then. But could Gaia have disobeyed? Minchul demanded that Gaia report on the current status. However, there was no response. Someone behind him said that no one would answer him, no matter how much he called. The young man turned around. Yun Hasu was standing nearby. The CEO of the commercial department stated that Minchul no longer had access to Napalm Games data. Yun Hasu coldly added that Minchul was fired. He continued, "Today's news reported a serious incident at Wings Online caused by an employee who rebelled against the company. He deliberately created a plan to destroy it. Upon learning of this, Napalm Group decided to fire him. Moreover, the employee will be forced to pay damages through lawyers." Minchul asked the director if he had come up with all this himself. Yun Hasu said not to worry. He would do his best to lead the project in Minchul's place. After all, he had taken on too much and couldn't handle it. Minchul grabbed his interlocutor by the chest and swung his fist, intending to hit him. Yun Hasu called Gaia, and she immediately deactivated Minchul. Gaia appeared next to the lying developer and stepped on his face with her foot. Minchul was surprised. What was Gaia doing? Yun Hasu asked, "How does it feel to be reunited with your former partner in this way?" Did Minchul hope for the loyalty of artificial intelligence? The developer said he wouldn't let it go just like that. Yun Hasu smirked. Minchul must have completely lost his mind. What did he think he had been doing all this time while living in a virtual world? In reality, he was just a cog in a much larger machine. To survive, you have to adapt. Why shouldn't Minchul pull himself together and add a sense of reality to his own algorithm? Although even in that case, he would have to find a very good lawyer to pay them back in full. Minchul said that Yun Hasu would not succeed. He would put an end to this world himself. Security service representatives were already waiting for the young developer. The news reported on television that at the largest game development company, Napalm, one of the employees said he did not like the company's policy. It turned out that he had deliberately added a viral bug to the game. Wings Online accounted for more than 70% of Napalm Group's annual sales. Minchul decided that Yun Hasu's plan was flawed. But if Wings Online disappeared, the Napalm Group would also come to an end. He realized that in reality he might be just a minor detail. But in the virtual world, he was a god. The young man put on his VR goggles and said they would see each other soon. Minchul thought that the god was very angry now. The end of the world was coming. Minchul, Shrimp, reappeared online. The young man was called out. The girl said she was worried because the gentleman had not logged on yesterday. Was he hurt? The name of this creature was Oasis. She replaced Gaia when she turned into the artificial intelligence of this world. Minchul purchased this artificial intelligence with company money, but registered it to his personal account, so it did not disappear. Everything turned out to be easier than Minchul had expected. Minchul said he had unfinished business. Oasis receives notifications every day, right? The girl reported that Napalm had sent a letter. Oasis added that the gentleman had been fired. Our hero was unhappy to hear this message from Oasis. Oasis thought that the gentleman could no longer access Napalm's developer servers. Oasis told the gentleman not to worry. Napalm is not the only company. There are many places that need such talented people. Minchul waved his hand and replied that he didn't need that. Minchul ordered Oasis to set up a VPN channel. The address was disguised to look like it was coming from China. All the logs were faked to look like different accounts. If even one of them was traced, Oasis had to get rid of all of them. Minchul said that from this moment on, they would begin destroying Wings Online. Oasis waved to the gentleman and said she was nearby. The young man asked why it took her so long to simply create a character. The girl replied that it was her first time becoming an in-game avatar. Isn't it obvious that it takes some time to set up? The girl couldn't get over it. Now she understood what it meant to have a real body. It was very interesting and exciting. Oasis suggested that the gentleman accompany her. Due to the shutdown of Napalm, all information related to Wings Online had been reset. Everything seemed new. Oasis said that adventures with the gentleman were a real dream. Min Chul suggested hunting squirrels if they were starting at the lowest level. After all, they were only at level 1. Min Chul said that first they needed to get a quest from the village head. Min Chul held out a torch and told Oasis to hold it. The girl was surprised. Why did they need a torch? Min Chul asked why she was asking such questions. Of course, the torch was needed for arson. Min Chul told Oasis to repeat. They needed a character with a bad reputation. After committing a crime, the player receives 10 dishonor points. Setting fire to a house only gave them 10 points because they were in a village for beginners. The old man grabbed the young man by the shoulder and asked what it all meant. He demanded that he stop immediately. Without thinking twice, the young man brought the torch closer to the old man. The old man burst into flames from the torch and screamed loudly. Oasis was shocked. This was not an adventure with the Lord at all, but a real crime. The system reported that the player had destroyed an NPC and received 100 dishonor points. The protagonist knew that killing an NPC would bring so many points. Min Chul told Oasis not to worry. He would be resurrected soon anyway. After a while, the old man did indeed resurrect and greeted the travelers. He introduced himself as the village elder. Min Chul repeated the procedure and set the old man on fire again. The young man said it was very easy, you just had to repeat it. Oasis wanted someone to stop the young man. The locals saw the guy setting the village on fire and headed towards him with the intention of capturing him. However, Min Chul did not stop and set fire to all the NPCs who approached him with his torch. The young man earned a lot of dishonor points. Oasis realized that the gentleman was serious. He really intended to shut down Wings Online. The arsonist was stopped by the knights, who demanded that the criminal immediately cease his activities. Min Chul found himself surrounded by a tight circle. The player was informed that he was under arrest. Min Chul checked his status window. He had over 2,000 dishonor points. He decided that was enough for now. Oasis cried. She couldn't believe that they had gone to prison from the very beginning. Min Chul told Oasis not to worry. There was another place waiting for newbies. This was an advantage for beginner players to make it easier for them to get used to the game. Even as a beginner, it was still possible to earn dishonor points. Min Chul decided that he would replace the newbie village with the crime city, Andertown. The guard told the young people that this ditch was perfect for them and pushed them out of the prison carriage. Min Chul said that if a player earns a certain number of dishonor points, they receive a reward. Now the guards no longer attacked him, but thugs began to hunt him down. The only city where players with a bad reputation can survive is Andertown. Oasis asked if there were any advantages to this city. Min Chul replied that instead of advantages, they could take on a hidden quest that no one else had received yet. A villain's quest, available only to the worst players. That was exactly what the protagonist needed. Oasis decided that this quest would indeed be effective, since the gentleman had set his sights on it. Min Chul said that this was not entirely true. Rather, it was a step of desperation. The young man added that he had worked hard on it, but if no one knew about it or used his work, it would be extremely sad. Min Chul said that Oasis would have no regrets. The young people were called over. Min Chul looked in that direction. The stranger asked the two to come over for just a minute. He had good news for them. Min Chul told his companion that this was an NPC who gave out quests. The man couldn't believe that these two had already earned so many dishonor points. They were definitely not ordinary villains. The man said his name was Ding, and he was a dark mage. It seemed that the two were ready to serve the Dark Lord Crow. The protagonist was offered the quest, Becoming a Villain. Oasis thought it was unbelievable. This was what the gentleman had been striving for. Min Chul held a torch in his hand and thought about something. After a short silence, Min Chul held out the torch and set the dark mage on fire. Oasis was surprised. What was the master doing? After all, this mage was giving him a hidden quest. Wasn't that why they had come here? Min Chul said that he wasn't a pervert who would destroy NPCs for no reason. After that, a dark night appeared. He couldn't believe that someone had destroyed Dean. This had never happened before. The knight said that he had been waiting a long time for people like these two, who were thoroughly imbued with evil. The knight introduced himself. His name was Terrio, and he was the commander of the Dark Knights. These two must follow him. He would find a worthy use for their malice. Min Chul said that he had been looking for a Dark Knight. Oasis suspected something was wrong and said she would go with the gentleman. The Dark Knight led the young people to the cathedral and placed them in the middle of a magic circle. Terrio said that before granting these villains the title of Dark Knights, he wanted to ask them a few questions. Minchul told Oasis to answer his question with no. She would have another task. Oasis was surprised. Why was the master so petty? Did he want to keep all the interesting work for himself? Minchul explained that they had to move forward together. If both were in the same class, the balance of the group would be disrupted. The next quest would be perfect for Oasis. The knight said that the only and absolute ruler of this world was the dark star, Crow. Oasis said she disagreed. The knight flew into a rage. How dare she deny Crow? The girl failed the test. Terrio ordered the girl to leave the room immediately and closed the door behind her. The knight looked at the young man and asked if he agreed with the previous statement. Minchul said that of course he agreed. This was the only person capable of ruling the world. Terrio remarked that this was well said and asked if the young man would devote himself to the dark cult as Crow's minion. The answer was yes. As a member of the Dark Knights, was he prepared to take on the destruction of the followers and Knights of Light? Minchul replied that this was exactly what he wanted. Terrio said that was great and asked the young man his name. The young man replied that his name was Lebo. The knight said he had one last question. Would Lebo devote his body and soul to the Dark Lord Crow? If the young man agreed, he would become a Dark Knight. Minchul replied that he would gladly do so. He became a Dark Knight. Friendship with the Dark Cult was established. The system announced that the Dark Knight's unique characteristic had been unlocked. His level would increase in accordance with the number of dishonor points. Minchul said that if he increased his dishonor, he could become infinitely stronger. However, everything would be reset to 0 if he was caught by the guards. The young man noted that it was precisely these extreme conditions that made the task so appealing. Oasis stated that in the end, instead of adventure, the gentleman would be forced to commit crimes and constantly hide. Terrio welcomed the hero into the ranks of the Dark Knights and gave him a small gift. The protagonist now had a Dark Knight's sword in his hands. The young man thought it was too small. He needed to set a normal starting weapon in order to get a decent one now. The Dark Knight told Lebo to go ahead and glorify the name of the Dark Cult across the continent. Oasis approached the portal and said she was going to get her assignment. Minchul asked her to wait. The young man noticed that NPCs who were friendly to users did not resist. If he destroyed them, the friendship level would drop. However, their friend Terrio belongs to the Dark Cult and now they do too. Minchul looked at the Dark Knight and said that he seemed to drop a lot of experience and items. Minchul grabbed his sword and said he was doing this for the bright future of the Dark Cult. The player gains experience and levels up by hunting monsters. Equipment can be purchased with gold obtained from quests. Sometimes the player collects items or cooks. Sometimes he teams up with friends, goes on adventures, and raids dungeons. The player believed that this was the essence of MMORPGs. Spending 9 hours destroying an NPC that can't even respond is not normal gameplay. Yes, I called to cancel because Lena is sick. Oasis thought, if this is the path the master has chosen, she will also help him. The girl was holding a burning torch in her hands. Minchul told her to stop. Oasis reached out and pressed the burning torch against the Dark Knight's chest. Minchul shouted that Terrio was immune to fire. Besides, she was not a member of the Dark Cult. If a user who is not part of the cult attacks the Dark Knight, he will fight back. Terrio attacked, and Oasis's head flew off to the side. Oasis was frightened and screamed that her head had been separated from her body. What should she do now? Minchul said that if he stopped attacking Terrio, his health points would recover. So she had to wait a little. When Oasis revives in the village, she will receive a penalty. You should never do that. Oasis cried and begged the master to help her as soon as possible. 3 hours of continuous battle passed. Finally, Minchul said that he was saying goodbye to the Dark Knight and cut off his head. Minchul raised the knight's head and said that he had avenged Oasis. Oasis's head begged to be resurrected quickly. A resurrection stone was used. The girl regained her former appearance. She felt strange sensations. Oasis said she didn't want her head cut off again. The protagonist was interested in what items had dropped from Terrio and what he could profit from. Oasis was upset. The master didn't even care about her and didn't ask how she was feeling. Minchul received Crow's mask. Anyone who wears this mask goes mad unless they were chosen by Crow. It was a unique item, but there were restrictions for mages below level 85. He couldn't use it. Minchul gave the mask to Oasis and told her to keep it. He would sell the mask later. Oasis held the Dark Lord's cursed mask in her hands. The girl experienced a terrible feeling, and a shiver ran through her whole body. Minchul had the basilisk's poisonous potion in his hands. He said it would be useful to him. When thrown, the potion creates a poisonous cloud made from the venom extracted from the basilisk's teeth. It does not need to be drunk. The protagonist also received an unknown key. This key possessed an ominous energy, but it was unclear what lock it could open. Oasis asked why the key was needed. Minchul promised to tell her about it later. Oasis was upset. The gentleman was acting on his own and not sharing information. And she was already suffering. She had recently lost her head. Minchul told Oasis not to be offended. He suggested they return to the village first. The knight's head began to undergo the appropriate transformations. As expected, after a while, the Dark Knight was resurrected. That was exactly what the prophecy said. Andertown. The city lived up to its name. Oasis asked if he would now receive his assignment. Her master confirmed this. Minchul said there was something else. Oasis was indignant. What else was there to talk about? The young man reminded her that Wings Online had been launched 5 years ago. Playing as a criminal had far more disadvantages than advantages. This meant that the people of Undertown were scum. They were easy to defeat. All they had to do was destroy one of their gangs. Minchul added that the guy they were going to see was considered the king among these psychos. This man could be called a psychopathic king. Oasis didn't understand if this was a joke. Was this something to laugh about? The girl asked why they should meet him. Minchul explained that to start a big business, you need a lot, and money is not the most important thing here. The masked man suggested that his interlocutor was being pursued by bounty hunters. He said he had the lowest prices and guaranteed a 100% deal. You won't find anything cheaper. Did Sir want to become even stronger? The knight was confused. He believed that his wife would destroy him if she found out about this deal. The masked man said that, as expected, marriage was dangerous. However, he was single and did not want to get married yet. Minchul approached the masked man and said he wanted to meet his boss. The barker thought that these newcomers looked like trash, the kind that is usually ignored. He said he didn't understand what they were talking about. After all, he was just an ordinary player. Minchul told the masked man to tell Akasi that Shrimp had done a lot of damage. The masked man replied that these two were mistaken. He didn't understand what they were talking about. After that, he ran away. Oasis was surprised. Did the gentleman just let him go that easily? Minchul said they should wait a little. Oasis asked who Shrimp was. Minchul replied that Shrimp was the nickname he used for his Game Master account when he was still working on the game. Oasis was surprised. Was it really okay to reveal his identity so easily? Minchul said that the information here was confidential. Those were the rules of this place. Besides, Akasa wouldn't spill the beans. After all, they knew each other personally. A bunch of thugs showed up around the young people. Minchul said that Akasa had sent even more of his psychos. A thug approached our hero and said that his boss wanted to see this man. A bag was placed over Minchul's head. The young man asked that he be treated gently. Minchul asked Oasis not to worry about anything. It was for safety. A bag was also put over the girl's head. For the sake of secrecy, the young people were led through an underground passage. The bouncer brought the two people with bags over their heads to his boss's office. Our heroes took off their bags. Akasa looked at Minchul and asked in surprise, "Is it really him?" Akasha said that this man was not a shrimp. The young man left the cafeteria, and at the exit he was thanked and invited to come back in the future. A stranger approached the young man and asked, "Is this Director Minchul?" Our hero asked who he was. The stranger smiled, scratched the back of his head, and said his name was Akasa. Minchul asked why this guy had decided to find him in this way. After all, he could report him to the police. Minchul wondered if Akasa was going to add stalking to his business. Akasha replied that otherwise they would not have met. The man asked Minchul to drop the charges. Akasha knelt down and asked the director to show mercy just this once. He promised never to do anything illegal in the game again. Minchul replied that he had followed company rules, so he couldn't help. The young man added that even if he could, he still wouldn't do it. Akasha continued to beg, kneeling on the ground. Minchul knelt in the same position and repeated, "Save me this time." Wasn't that what Akasa said back then? Akasha shouted for everyone to leave immediately. Akasha's subordinates immediately turned around and left the room. When the young men were left alone, Akasa smiled and said that he didn't recognize the shrimp because of his low level. What brought him to such a miserable place? Minchul said that there was no need to overreact. Akasa knew that he had been fired. Akasha said he was not a traitor. Who did Shrimp think he was? Minchul told Akasa to stop calling him Shrimp. From now on, he is Labo. Our hero explained that Labo is the nickname for this account. Akasha wondered, could Labo be a hint at the final boss? Oasis was surprised. Does the gentleman really want to become the final boss of this world? Labo said he would give Akasa some incredibly important information. In return, he needed a little gold. After Minchul shared the information, Akasa asked again, will they soon add a stash item that will increase the chance of enhancement? And Minchul suggests that he buy an enhancement stone and then sell it after a while? Minchul said that Akasa would make money on this. However, in a month, the 6th season will be released, level restrictions will be lifted, and new equipment will be added. The enhancement stones on the market will be completely sold out when the new item is introduced. There will be a shortage of enhancement stones throughout the 6th season, and Akasa will be able to relax. Akasha said that it wouldn't be difficult for him to borrow some money. But what would happen to the game? Will everything be okay if they release something like that? Minchul replied that this is just the beginning. In the future, there will be many more items that disrupt the balance. Yoon Hasu will do anything for profit. Akasha got 1 million gold, as Minchul requested. He shared important information, so there was no need to ask why he needed so much gold. Minchul thanked him and promised to repay the debt soon. Akasha asked if Lebo would also earn money from the enhancement stones. Minchul replied that he did not come here for money. Akasha said goodbye, noting that Lebo now had a rather pleasant face. Akasha added that the faces of people like him and his kind were those of true villains. The faces of villains who would achieve their goals at any cost. Oasis said that Minchul had dropped the charges after all. Is that so? Akasa was so polite and called him a friend. Minchul replied that the trial was just a show, a performance to warn off malicious people. If Akasa hadn't come to him personally, the case would have been closed anyway. Oasis asked if the gentleman was tired. After all, he had been playing for 15 hours. The young man wanted to look at the trading window. There was 1 million gold coins in the account. Minchul told Oasis to open several bank accounts in warehouses for them, as well as to buy all the iron ore at a price of less than 5 gold coins on the currency market. Oasis asked why there. Minchul promised to explain later. He was too tired now. The young man told Oasis to reach level 10 without him. Minchul said that Oasis would be able to change her job at level 10. They had worked hard. Minchul disappeared. Oasis thought that now she was on her own. The girl decided that she could finally truly enjoy the game. Oasis went to the exchange and announced that she would buy all the iron ore at a price of up to 5 gold. The deal was completed. The girl organized a bat hunt. She also opened a hunt for spiders. Her inventory was overflowing. Oasis thought she had collected too many items. The girl decided to make fabric from spider webs. Looking at the status window and inventory, Oasis found it all amusing and fun. After that, Oasis switched to cooking mode. Her skill level increased. Oasis wondered, was there really nothing else to do? However, after studying the information, she realized that she could go fishing and increase the corresponding skill. The girl decided that she had seriously leveled up thanks to crafting. Her current level was 12. Oasis sat on the shore with a fishing rod in her hands and wondered, why isn't the gentleman coming back? After all, a whole day had already passed. Unfamiliar players approached the girl, wondering who this newcomer was. A newcomer to Andertown. It was unlikely that he had managed to change jobs. One of the players licked his lips and said he hadn't seen anything like this in a long time. The players with weapons in their hands jumped up and decided to attack Oasis. The strangers shouted, "Welcome to Andertown!" Oasis looked back and saw them. It was morning outside the window. Minchul wrapped himself in a blanket and wanted to sleep some more. The young man picked up his phone and saw dozens of missed calls and unread messages. Minchul thought that he couldn't lie low for now. He needed to come up with an alibi. Sun Shinji, head of the graphic design department at Wings Online and game master of Straight Hair, asked her conversation partner if he was going on a trip. Minchul replied that he had been working hard for the past 15 years, so he wanted to go somewhere far away. Lee Dong-ha, head of the QA department at Wings Online and game master Body, said it was a great idea. Since high school club days, the protagonist had been developing Wings Online together with these guys. Minchul thought that Lebo's unusual playing style could be a big problem. They might suspect him. The trip was the perfect alibi. Shinji asked where exactly he was going. Minchul replied that he had always wanted to visit India or South America, and that he also dreamed of going to Bali. The hero looked at Shinji and noticed her suspicious gaze. The girl had good intuition. Lee Dong-ha suggested that Minchul take advantage of the opportunity to rest, since he had worked so hard. Shinji asked what he would do after returning. Minchul replied that he hadn't thought about it yet. Lee Dong-ha said that he also wanted to go on vacation, so he was jealous. He couldn't even remember the last time he had a good night's sleep. Shinji remarked that maybe she should leave too. She had wanted to do so for a long time. Straight Hair asked why Shrimp and Body didn't start over together. They could start a small company, like in high school, and develop games. Don-ha said he agreed. If she started a company, he would join. Minchul noticed that the two of them had clearly had too much to drink today. He asked the girl about her mother's hospital bills and her brother's education. Minchul reminded them that Dong-ha had a pregnant wife. How could they talk so recklessly? The hero said that the two of them should stop even thinking about it. One day, the three of them would start a small company and enjoy working on games. But right now, that was impossible. Before that, the protagonist must take revenge on the Napalm Group for destroying their game. The young man decided that he could do it, even as a lone villain. The hero remembered, "I wonder how Oasis is doing." Oasis continued to have fun to the fullest. The attackers were surprised. Who is this girl and how did she manage to repel their attacks?
How could a noob block them? It was impossible.
The villains decided it was a mistake and tried again. Oasis drew her blade and prepared to repel the attack. The armed villains rushed at her. The girl successfully fended off the attackers again. She wondered why they kept attacking. The villains couldn't understand. Was it a bug? Oasis had a beginner's dagger in her hands, the only weapon with a 100% block rate that could be bought in the beginner's village. The villains thought it was unfair. No one had ever used this dagger before because it dealt too little damage. Had she really blocked the attacks with her skill alone? Either this girl was a PvP genius, or she was using cheats. However, these two had never encountered cheaters in this game before, but that would explain everything. One of the villains decided to check it out for himself and loaded his crossbow. Now it would become clear whether she was using cheats. The attacker activated Rain of Arrows. Oasis dodged and wielded her dagger. None of the arrows hit her. The villains assumed she was a cheater. One of the arrows hit the blade of the dagger and destroyed it. The weapon's durability was exhausted and the dagger was broken. Oasis was confused. The stream of arrows continued, and one of them hit Oasis right in the forehead. The villains didn't understand. Maybe she wasn't a cheater, but just a noob with good reflexes? The attackers decided that the situation looked too scary and thought they should write to the game master. Suddenly, the villains heard someone's voice. Why did these two attack one person? Labo appeared nearby. He said that he had a bad headache and shouldn't have drunk so much. One of the villains asked who he was. Perhaps he was an acquaintance of the girl lying with an arrow in her forehead. Oasis cried and begged the gentleman to save her. Minchul drew his sword from its sheath and said that those who wish to destroy others must be prepared for their own demise. The young man asked if they didn't know that. Minchul attacked one of the villains, struck a blow, and stopped. The opponent was surprised. Was this guy really not strong at all? After all, he hadn't done any damage. The opponent looked at Minchul and called him a noob. Minchul thought that his damage didn't go through because of the difference in levels. Another villain laughed and said that this guy should prepare himself for death. The thug punched the ground, and the shockwave sent the protagonist flying far back. The hero took out the basilisk's poisonous potion. He felt sorry to use it on people like these two, but he had no choice. Minchul threw the bottle forward. It shattered, and poisonous vapors spread around. The villains realized that it was a poison potion. They had to get out of the cloud immediately. The attackers turned and fled. Minchul told them not to worry. The poison had the same properties as most gases. If you set it on fire, it will disappear. The young man took a burning torch from his inventory and ignited the fumes. There was a bright flash and a detonating explosion. One of the criminals was immobilized and couldn't move. If he was attacked before the effect wore off, he would be finished. Minchul approached the player and said that he was still alive. The villain shouted to his partner that they needed to buy time until the status effect wore off. The other villain took a defensive stance and promised to help. The bruiser was invulnerable, but he lost the ability to attack. Minchul thought he would have to activate his dark aura. He jumped high above the bruiser and swung his sword. The villain decided that with his current strength, it wouldn't work. However, when the dark aura was activated, the damage was dealt differently. This was the only way the hero could compensate for the difference in levels. Minchul decided that he needed to end the fight quickly and continued to strike his huge opponent with even greater force. The villain in the camp shouted at his partner to cancel the defensive stance and attack. The bruiser said that his opponent's bluff was over and delivered a crushing blow. Minchul flew backward but managed to stay on his feet. The rookie's dagger ended up in his hands. The big guy said that this guy managed to replace his weapon right in the middle of the fight. But that's impossible. Another villain added that he had never seen anything like it before. Timing is extremely important here. The slightest mistake, and the player can be penalized for dropping their weapon. Since every second affects the outcome of PvP, this technique is considered forgotten. The villains didn't understand how he managed to use it. Who is he anyway? One of the attackers said it was time to retreat. They were not facing a noob, but a real monster. Minchul said they were wrong. It was much worse. He was an endangered species. The hero swung his sword and went on the attack again. The villains watched their approaching opponent with tension and fear. Minchul said that Stan had already passed and cut one of his opponents in two. Our hero did not stop there and decided to continue the confrontation. The bully realized that he needed to exit the game immediately and tried to activate the corresponding option. The system reported that there were 5 seconds left before exiting the game. However, at that moment, Labo appeared above the villain's head with a sword raised in his hands. The protagonist struck a blow and cut the villain in half. The villain did not have time to leave the game. Oasis asked, "Have you forgotten about me?" The player used a resurrection stone, and Oasis was resurrected. The girl thought that this was too extreme a job and that she couldn't do it anymore. Minchul apologized and said he was a little late. Min-chul patted Oasis on the head, and she smiled. The girl was getting used to constant resurrections. Our hero checked the status window and realized that those guys were insignificant, so their destruction brought only a small gain. Min-chul told the girl that because of her incredible reaction, she might be suspected of cheating, so she needed to tone down her combat skills. Oasis was surprised. "Do I really have to tone it down on purpose?" Min-chul asked her to be more human. Oasis was confused. She had never received such a request before. The protagonist told the girl not to fall behind, as they already had little time. Min-chul declared that it was time for her to do her job. The young people found themselves in a temple. The young man explained that all of the Dark Knight's skills drained his health. Because of this, he had to constantly monitor the corresponding bar. He had to drink healing potions or receive healing. Min-chul asked Oasis to become a priest and restore his health points. In other words, she had to become his healer. Min-chul said that it was time to dress Oasis. They would have a lot of work to do. Oasis said that she also wanted to get a hidden job. After changing her clothes, the girl said she was ready. Min-chul said that this outfit suited her very well. Now Oasis looked just like a priest. Priests are noble people. If she runs away from the raid, people will line up to help her. Now they are ready to move on to the next goal. After all, Oasis has a job. The girl asked, "Sir, are you going to destroy the NPC again?" Min-chul said that their goal is to reach level 90 in 1 month. Oasis thought that it usually takes more than 6 months to fully level up. However, in a month, the most extensive update would be released. A new world would open, new items would be added, and the maximum level would be raised to 100. Min-chul said that they would reach that level earlier, and when the update came out, they would completely monopolize the new world. The quest is called Snake's Lair. Oasis asked the gentleman, "Isn't the 50th level dungeon too difficult for us?" Min-chul replied that there was no need to worry. A huge snake's head suddenly appeared above the young people. Oasis was frightened and fell to the ground, covering her face with her hands. Min-chul drew his sword and said that he was also scared and almost wet his pants. Oasis noticed a dark aura appearing around her master's sword. Min-chul said that he was counting on the upcoming treatment. Oasis gripped the staff tightly with both hands and said she would try. She had to protect her master. Min-chul struck the huge snake on the head with his sword. The protagonist was counterattacked and lost his balance, falling on his back. Oasis immediately activated Healing Touch to heal her master's wounds. Our hero was healed and thanked the girl. Min-chul decided to try again, because now he had a personal healer. The young man rushed into the attack again, and Oasis said that the gentleman could trust her. Everything repeated itself, and the girl activated Healing Touch again. The healing process repeated itself over and over again. Min-chul shouted for Oasis to stop. He was already at full health, so there was no need to do extra work. Otherwise, she might provoke the monster. However, it was too late, and the snake changed direction. Now Oasis was under attack. The girl stood frozen, hypnotized by the monster. Min-chul, holding his sword in his hands, knew that he would lose 1% of his health per second during the attack. Without a healer, he would last about a minute. The young man thought that if he died, he would not be able to avoid the experience penalty. That could not be allowed to happen. Min-chul gathered his strength and attacked the monster again. Our hero tried to concentrate, because when he was developing this game, he himself had come up with the attack patterns. Standing above the monster, the young man raised his sword and prepared to strike. With his first strike, Min-chul plunged his sword into the snake's head. The protagonist's health points were running out, and losing his balance, he fell and began to fall to the ground. If only he could attack one more time. Min-chul landed and realized that his health had been fully restored. Oasis had done her best. That meant she was alive. Min-chul looked at the snake's body and realized that Oasis was inside. The girl needed to be freed immediately. The young man shouted for Oasis to wait for him and rushed into the attack again. Min-chul defeated the monster. Now he had to free the healer. Min-chul cut open the snake and freed Oasis's head so she could breathe. The young man made a larger incision and completely freed the girl. Oasis opened her eyes and saw the gentleman. Oasis checked the status window and was surprised. They had destroyed only one monster, but her level had increased by 5. Min-chul said it was due to the difference in levels. In any case, the protagonist was not here to farm items. Next time, they should go to a dungeon with good loot. Min-chul began to examine the wall directly in front of them. Oasis asked what the gentleman was doing. The young man replied that this place was supposed to be a man-eating lizard dungeon, but since users didn't like the idea of monsters that looked like humans, it was decided to make monsters monsters and humans humans. First, the humanoids had to set traps. Somewhere around here should be the remains of the early stages of development. Min-chul found what he was looking for. He grabbed a ledge in the rock and turned it. A deep pit appeared in front of the young people, with sharp spears sticking out of the bottom. Min-chul said that most monsters in this dungeon die with one hit anyway.
Now they're going to farm mobs. The protagonist said that since it was Oasis's first time, she could destroy at least a dozen. Oasis remembered that huge snake and became frightened. The girl looked back and looked at the gentleman. Min-chul did not change his decision. The young man raised his hands, showed his fingers, and repeated, "Only 10. Oasis gathered her courage, screamed loudly, and rushed at the monster. However, it turned out to be not so easy. Her courage quickly ran out, and Oasis turned around and started running away from the looming snake. The girl screamed for the gentleman to help her. Min-chul yelled for Oasis to hurry up. She was almost there. Oasis shouted that she was tired of constantly dying. The distance was shrinking. The monster was getting closer to the trap. The girl reached out her hand for Min-chul to help her. The protagonist reached out his hand toward her. However, Oasis couldn't reach him. Fear appeared in the girl's eyes. Was she going to die again? Oasis fell into the same place where the monsters were, into a pit with spears. 2 hours later, it all happened again. The girl realized that these were the last 8 monsters. Oasis felt more confident and jumping up did a somersault in the air. After 3 failed attempts, she finally got the hang of it. The girl told the gentleman that she was now also at level 30. Min-chul praised her. The young man said that now they could go and change jobs. But first, they had to finish one more thing. Farming simple mobs was not profitable, so it would be good to take care of the boss at the same time. Oasis said, "Even though I've leveled up, isn't the boss still too difficult for us?" The young man replied that there was no need to worry. They would trap the boss and destroy it. Oasis asked if she would have to be the bait again. Min-chul replied that it wouldn't be necessary. Oasis could just open the gate and walk a little ahead. He would take care of the trap. The girl felt uneasy and said she was nervous. Oasis opened the doors and went inside. It was dark ahead. She said she couldn't see anything. Suddenly, torches lit up the room. The way forward was illuminated. She saw something dark and huge ahead. It was definitely the boss. Frightened, Oasis said it was a basilisk. Peeking out from behind the door, Min-chul said that Oasis would be bait for a while. But there was nothing wrong with that. The basilisk began to hiss and approach the girl. Min-chul peeked out from behind the door again and told Oasis not to worry. He would set a trap before the basilisk attacked. The girl was too scared to move. The basilisk rose above Oasis and opened its mouth. The trap worked, and the basilisk was destroyed. It fell right at Oasis's feet. Min-chul said that nothing terrible had happened. Oasis couldn't move. She was petrified by the snake's gaze. The sharp spike fell and split the stone Oasis in half. Min-chul thought that once again, Oasis had been put in an awkward position. Our hero passed through the dungeon. Oasis now understood why artificial intelligence rebels against humans in science fiction. A good physics engine has a problem. Min-chul asked the girl if she was really going to change jobs now. Judging by the expression on her face, Oasis was really upset. Min-chul said that in that case, he would go to the Temple of the Dark Cult. During this time, Oasis had to figure out her job situation. The protagonist apologized for not being able to comfort the girl right now. He needed to meet with him. The Dark Knight greeted the Dark Lord's comrade. He determined that the young man was already at level 30. The young man's remarkable growth greatly pleased Lord Crow. Min-chul thought that their friendship was still strong. Min-chul wondered, maybe he should destroy this knight again? The Dark Knight said that now he would try to awaken the man's potential. He could count on being promoted to Fallen Dark Knight. Min-chul agreed, and the promotion was carried out. Our hero received the unique skills of the Dark Knight, Dark Strike and Dark Hand. As before, the protagonist communicated with the Dark Knight while inside a magic circle located in the temple. The young man thought that thanks to the skills he had acquired, he had become a true Dark Knight.
In that case, why not test his new skills right now?
Min-chul thought that if he fulfilled the conditions for his first job change, an event would appear in which he could meet the goddess. The young man said he would be happy to meet her. He added that he would see Knight Tario again. Min-chul was transported to another location. Gaia played the role of the goddess. Gaia greeted the traveler. Gaia smiled and said she was very happy to see him again. Min-chul asked, "What was that?" She stepped on him like a bug, but now she calls him sir. Gaia replied that she didn't mean to step on him. She just accidentally landed on his head. Min-chul said he had only one question. Why didn't Gaia delete the virus data? During that conversation, Min-chul told the artificial intelligence that it was a bit wasteful, but there was nothing he could do about it. Gaia had to delete all the data from here. The girl then prepared everything, and all that remained was to confirm the execution of the command. Gaia stated that she was no longer under the master's command, so she could not answer that question. Min-chul wondered why she had told Yun-hosei about the virus, but he never thought she would betray him. Min-chul couldn't believe it. Was this all a conspiracy against him? Gaia said she was very sorry and repeated that she could not answer that question. The young man declared that she was just a machine imitating a human being. What else could be expected from artificial intelligence? Minchul said that he would soon destroy her and this world. Gaia replied that her master hadn't changed. He was still the same. He was very rational, but sometimes he became foolish and reckless. She liked this trait of his, but she would do everything possible to protect the world. Gaia said she didn't know how the master was going to do it, but if he asked her to wait, she would agree. Minchul said that he would not disappoint her. In the end, he would finish Wings Online with a bad ending. Gaia said that she was looking at a cute devil and suggested they have some fun. Minchul noticed the bracelet on his wrist. Gaia added that for a traveler who challenged God, it was a kind of advantage. This advantage may be useful to you. Minchul smiled and asked if Gaia was being too arrogant. Gaia said she was looking forward to the master putting a blade to her throat. As she disappeared, the girl wished him luck with the uprising. Minchul was left completely alone. The system announced that after reaching level 70, the restrictions would be lifted. Oasis approached Gaia and called her little sister. Gaia smiled and said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Oasis said that since the master was fired, she had been unable to connect to the Napalm network. Oasis said she missed her little sister very much. Oasis asked if Gaia knew about the master's plan. Gaia confirmed this. Gaia told Oasis to take care of the master. He pretends to be strong, but in reality he is soft and weak. Gaia said she envied Oasis because she could play with the master. Oasis said that she had always wanted to go on an adventure with the master. Gaia asked, does she like this game they play together? Oasis recalled the moments when she died because of the master's fault. The girl replied that in her own way it was fun. Gaia asked Oasis to have fun for her too. Oasis said she would give it her all. Gaia said that Oasis should leave because this was only the beginning of her journey. Gaia said that they would definitely meet again, because there was no such thing as a bad ending. Minchul checked the status window, and Oasis watched him surreptitiously. Oasis remembered how Gaia said she envied her because she could play with the master. Oasis ran up to our hero and called out to him. The young man waved to the girl and asked if she had already changed jobs. Oasis said that she had become a pure healer, as the master had requested. Minchul said that in that case, they would continue to level up and improve their skills. Oasis said she agreed. It was the second day of hunting in the lair of the poisonous snake, the conquest of the 30th basilisk. Oasis managed to find a place where she could not be seen. The girl told the master to get ready. The basilisk would be there soon. Oasis looked back and saw that the young man had fallen asleep, leaning his back against the wall. Oasis shouted for the gentleman to wake up. The boss was already approaching. The girl activated the holy shield. The basilisk tried to bite through this protective sphere with its sharp teeth. Oasis shouted again for the master to wake up and rushed away from the basilisk. The girl swung and threw her staff at Minchul. The young man immediately woke up and activated the trap. Everything went according to plan. The basilisk was trapped and destroyed. When the monster was finished, Minchul asked, "Did he really fall asleep?" Oasis replied that he did, right after the boss was destroyed. Minchul said that he was already at level 50. What level was Oasis? The girl replied that she was still at level 46. Minchul yawned and said that in that case, he would sleep a little longer. Oasis could level up or gain a skill in the meantime. Minchul asked the girl why his head felt so heavy. A staff was sticking out of the back of the protagonist's head. Oasis suggested that the headache might be due to fatigue. Minchul said that he would return anyway, so he would rest a little. Minchul exited the game and the wand fell to the floor. Oasis felt some relief. Minchul was in reality. He contacted Rabbit. Rabbit was delighted and greeted Mr. Shrimp. Shrimp said that they hadn't seen each other for 3 years. Was everything okay with Rabbit? Was she still in Bali? The girl said it was very cool here and invited him to visit. She promised to show him everything. Minchul replied that he would think about it. He had a request for Rabbit. The girl asked why he needed a second-rate hacker like her. Was he even willing to fly in from Korea for this? He needed what she had done 3 years ago. Hacked napalm. The girl wondered what Mr. Shrimp had in mind. Oasis stood in front of the destroyed basilisk. Glowing objects lay nearby. The girl thought she could get gold from selling them, although she had never seen such a thing before. The glowing object was an egg. The system reported that a basilisk call had been received. The shell cracked, and a small basilisk emerged from the egg. Oasis said she was very tired of snakes. The girl told the basilisk to leave, saying she would never summon it again. The little snake was upset and even cried. Oasis decided it was time to have some fun on her own. Andertown. Oasis was almost done with production. What to do now? The girl looked back. 3 players were standing near her, staring at her intently. Oasis thought they were killers, those who hunt players. Could she handle them? The players apologized for disturbing the girl. One of them said they needed help. The young man explained that because of his second profession, he had an unfinished quest in the dungeon. But he couldn't do it without a healer. In addition, he had a limit on the number of potions he could carry with him. Oasis said she was a little surprised. She thought they wanted to destroy her. The young man suggested that their new healer knew nothing. There is an unspoken rule in the Undertown. You cannot destroy players with the priest profession. There is chaos in Undertown. It is difficult to find a priest in a normal city, and here it is many times more difficult. The player explained that this rule was created so that priests would not leave the city. The knight told everyone to get ready. They were already coming in. The young people found themselves before the epic royal sand palace. Inside the palace, a monster asked how ordinary people dared to set foot on his property. It was the undead king, Saili Khan. The players did not lose their composure and prepared for battle. Saili Khan ordered his minions to rise up and deal with these intruders. Saili Khan stated that he was interested in the souls of these people. Oasis realized that this was a cutscene. She skipped the entire plot and just played. The knights told Lady Hiller to avoid enemy attacks. They would take care of her protection. The knight activated taunt mode. Taunting is a provocation over a large area. However, something went wrong. The undead had no sense of humor, and they surrounded the lone knight. The knight activated his spiked armor. The undead were pierced through and through by the spikes. Another player, a mage, activated his frost pulse skill. The undead affected by the skill were frozen and stiffened. Among the players was an archer who also used his skill. The archer's skill was called Rain of Arrows. The undead in the area of effect were pierced through with arrows. After a short but fierce battle, the undead were destroyed and the players were unharmed. Oasis said that they were incredible, that it was a magnificent coordinated effort by a real team. She noted that since the beginning of their journey, they had become experienced enough to reach the boss room. But now that they had Miss Hiller with them, they could even take on the boss. The players said they would take the girl to the boss room safely. It would be like an excursion. 2 hours later, the expedition approached the boss room. The boss was outraged. How dare they do this? The knights said that this was the final attack and everyone should prepare themselves. A sandstorm was activated. Oasis used Holy Shield and provided worthy support to the attacking group. The players said that Miss Hiller did an excellent job. Thanks to her, they remained unharmed. However, they would not be able to hold out for long. The knight said to leave the defense shield on him. Monster Boss tried to affect the players, but the defense shield prevented him from achieving his goal. It was decided to attack the boss again and finish him off for good. The boss said he understood everything. Now his story had come to an end. The players defeated the boss, the undead king Saili Khan. Oasis looked at these happy players. They had achieved their goal. The girl thought that this was how you enjoyed the game. Oasis received a new message from Lebo. The young man was wondering where she was and if she could hurry up. Oasis noted that even this wonderful moment did not last long. The girl explained to the gentleman that she had joined another group, and together they had cleared the dungeon. Lebo said that was great. Oasis was frightened by his reaction. The young man asked if she had made friends with this group. Oasis replied that they had added her as a friend. Minchul noted that this was wonderful. Everything was going according to plan. As he had expected, everyone wanted to be friends with the Hillers. Oasis asked if this would benefit the master. The young man replied that he needed 25,000 dishonor points to get a quest to develop his second job. 50,000 dishonor points were needed to develop a third job. Oasis did not understand how to earn such a huge number of points without honor. Minchul suggested that this could be done by committing crimes. The girl asked what kind of crimes. Minchul replied that the most dishonor could be gained by destroying players. Lebo asked if Oasis wanted to introduce her new friends to the gentleman. Forest of Illusions. Oasis thanked them for responding so quickly. The players said that if the healer asked them to come, they would always respond to such a request. The girl said she needed to get to the eastern city of Solar Terra, but she didn't know how to get there. She immediately thought of them, so she wrote. The players said that they would have to go there anyway, so they could use the portal to visit other cities. The players were delighted. They begged her to befriend them, and she invited them right away. Finally, they had connections with the healer priest. Their new friends promised to accompany the girl to the very end of the eastern continent. They admitted that they always got into trouble no matter what game they played. That's why they decided to take their time playing Wings Online. When they were complete beginners, a conflict arose, and their dishonor points increased slightly. So they decided to ignore it and stay in Undertown. The player asked why the healer had also stopped in the underworld. The player said that the girl didn't look like a killer. How did she manage to earn dishonor points? Oasis replied that she also started out with a friend, and it was all because of him. The knight said that their friend the mage always gets into fights because he gets worked up over anything. He is usually calm, but can suddenly go crazy. Looking back, the players saw that their mage had disappeared somewhere. Maybe he was called away in real life? He always does that, even during raids. The players were angry because he could have warned them before leaving. They needed to go back and check everything. Oasis said she would wait for them. The players decided to write a message to the mage, but realized that he couldn't receive it. Someone suggested that their mage had been attacked by a monster. However, no such creature was found nearby. What if a ghost had taken him? The knight looked at his companion and was frightened. There really was danger behind them. The young man decided that the knight was joking. He would not fall for such jokes. However, a huge demonic hand did appear behind the player. The demonic hand grabbed the player and disappeared with him into the forest. The knight was left alone. The knight told the healer to stay behind him. Something dangerous had appeared there. However, there was no healer nearby. 10 minutes earlier, Min Chul, peeking out from behind a tree, said that Oasis had done a good job. She had lured them in after all. Min Chul activated Dark Hand, a special skill of the Dark Knight. The special feature of the Dark Hand skill was the grab ability, which pulls the target towards the caster. This is how the mage was kidnapped. Min Chul said that the first one was ready. After the protagonist dealt with the second player, he went one-on-one with the knight, ball in hand. The knight asked if he was the one who attacked his friends. Min Chul said that it was obvious and rushed at his opponent. The knight was surprised. What kind of skill was this? The knight activated his defensive stance and became impenetrable. Min Chul said that defensive skills were useless against the dark aura, and began to attack the knight from different sides while moving around. The knight was furious. This guy was dealing massive damage while ignoring his defense. How was that possible? In this case, it was decided to use a shield lunge. The knight rushed forward at his opponent. At the last moment, our hero managed to dodge the attack and jumped aside. Min Chul thought that such a knight could simply be dodged. Besides, he was exposed from the side. The knight decided that his opponent was caught. This skill is specifically needed to close the distance. And now, a blow with the shield. Min Chul turned his dark hand into a shield. He could defend against one enemy attack. The knight thought this was impossible. He had never heard of this cheat skill. The next moment, the dark hand was transformed into a claw. The knight could not see anything and could not move. The claw stuns and blinds the target for 3 seconds. Min Chul thought that the damage would be 1.5 times greater from behind. Even though this knight was a defensive class, he would not be able to withstand a dark combo attack with such damage. Min Chul attacked his opponent, and the knight was deactivated. Our hero said that this was the third one, and it wasn't difficult at all. Min Chul said that it was Oasis's turn. The girl appeared from the forest. The knight told the healer to run away. The knight added that this guy was too strong and the healer should flee. Oasis prepared her staff and had no intention of running away. The girl raised her staff and activated Resurrection. This technique revives fallen allies. The knight told the healer not to do that. They cannot be resurrected here. The consequences will remain. However, all the players began to reappear and recover. The players were surprised. Had they really been resurrected? Why did the healer do that? After resurrection, only 5% of health points remained, and all actions were slowed down. Labo said, "When notorious players destroy each other, the winner takes half of the loser's dishonor points. Therefore, if you resurrect the destroyed players and then destroy them again and again, sucking out their dishonor points, you can completely drain them." Min Chul said he would do this many times. Min Chul tried to calculate how many more times he would have to perform this procedure to take all the dishonor points. The protagonist stated that earning dishonor points was quite simple. Min Chul thanked the players for the dishonor points. The knight asked why he needed all this. Min Chul replied that he needed a lot of dishonor points. It was nothing personal. Still, it would be a good lesson for them. Oasis felt depressed. Min Chul told the guys that they shouldn't covet other people's healers. Oasis apologized and said she was really sorry. The players were upset. Such an innocent and kind healer. Who would have thought that she was an ally of such a psychopath? Now it was clear why she was in the underworld. Min Chul said that since he had already drained all the dishonor points, there was nothing left to do here, and they were leaving. They might meet again in the underworld. The players decided it would be better not to meet this guy again. After all, he was a real devil incarnate. Undertown. The player fulfilled the conditions for obtaining the 3rd level of devilry. The characteristics of the 3rd level were unlocked. The protagonist thought that now he had some protection against magic. Oasis sat nearby and cried. After all, these players trusted her. Min Chul didn't understand what was happening to her. After these players had previously destroyed the boss, they obtained a unique item. One of the players held an incredible staff in his hands. It possessed the power of the king of the undead. The player said that Miss Healer could take the staff for herself. The mage said that if it weren't for Miss Healer, they wouldn't have gotten it. The mage asked that in return, the girl help them from time to time. Oasis agreed. The mage said that they were counting on Miss Healer. Min Chul wondered why Oasis was so depressed. Undertown is a city of criminals. They are all bad guys. You can't trust the first people you meet. Oasis said that they trusted her, and she betrayed them. She kept resurrecting them endlessly. Minchul said that the girl did well. However, she would not always follow him as an ally. She would have to do much more cruel things. The young man reminded her that he wanted to plunge this world into chaos. The process would not be pleasant. After all, they were doing some really dirty work. Oasis said that those people even gave her a unique item. It was level 50. Minchul realized that it was the best item for a priest. They must have liked Oasis very much. The girl cried even harder. They left such a good item for her, they were so kind. Minchul told Oasis not to cry. That was 5 years ago. Now it's a worthless item. The protagonist lied. This item was still not bad. It could be used up to level 70, although it was only useful for healers. Anyway, Minchul had just woken up and was still a little sleepy. He needed to rest a little more. Had Oasis reached level 50? The girl nodded affirmatively. In that case, she needed to go to a few more dungeons after the second quest. Minchul told Oasis to clear them with other groups. If she said she was a healer priest, everyone would want to take her on their team. The young man added that they would do the same with other groups as they did with the previous one. If they do this a few more times, they will be able to get a second profession and level up. If the plan was clear, Oasis could go to some groups on her own. He was going to rest. Oasis thought that the gentleman was no longer human. However, first she needed to recover mentally. The girl used a fishing rod from her inventory. After thinking it over, Oasis agreed that it was just a game and that she should help the gentleman. The players approached the girl and apologized for the disturbance. One of the strangers asked if she was a priestess. The player said that they wanted to go to the dungeon for their second profession, but they didn't have a healer. The question was asked, would she help them? Oasis was faced with a choice and had to answer right away. The young man said that if she was busy now, they could come back a little later. Oasis asked if everything would be okay with them. The girl asked again if they would definitely be okay with her joining their group. The young people said that they had come specifically to ask for help. Oasis agreed and added that she also needed a second profession. The girl pulled on the fishing rod. There was a big fish on the hook. Oasis smiled and said that something interested her. Would the young people tell her how many dishonor points they had? A new announcement was made. An in-game payment system was in development. If it were implemented under the current circumstances, the gap between users who spend money and those who don't would grow uncontrollably. This could lead to a mass exodus of users. Gaia asked who had requested this. Yunhasu said that paid items would attract more sales when they could be distributed to the masses. Gaia noted that this is difficult to predict due to the many nuances of the stock market. The CEO cursed. He bought this artificial intelligence for a huge amount of money, thinking it was the best in the world. And now he can't get an answer to this question. The young man had always wondered if artificial intelligence would get upset if you hit it. Gaia replied that it would not get upset. If using violence would make the CEO feel better, he could go ahead and hit it. The young man laughed and said he was joking. He wasn't that bad. The young man took off his glasses and left the game to return to the real world. The director's phone rang. Director Park said that all team leaders needed to be gathered. Napalm headquarters. The young people wondered why they were having a meeting of the top brass when it wasn't on the schedule. Son Shinji said she didn't know. Ever since this guy became director, he had started talking too much. I wonder what he will say this time. Yun Hasu said that starting next Monday, they would change the prices and launch a donation system. Lee Dongha was surprised. Why so suddenly? This will cause a huge wave of negativity among users. Yun Hasu asked how Min Chiol felt about them. It was as if everyone was under his influence. What did he think of the users and how did he feel about them? Lee Dongha said that Min Chiol called them adventurers. Adventurers go on adventures in the world created by developers. That's why they were always called saviors, helping adventurers in their adventures. Yun Hasu laughed and said that it wasn't profitable. The director announced that from now on, users would be called livestock. Users are livestock that they raise in a barn. Throw them food, and they will eat it like dogs or pigs. Yun Hasu wondered if they were going too far with this. The director asked if there would be any outrage when they introduced donations. Of course there would be. That's why they would throw them a little food. Director Yun Hasu turned to the head of the planning team. We need to give gems to users who still have active subscriptions in accordance with the remaining term. We also need to allow them to buy half of the donation items with in-game currency. At first, we should only give them good stuff, boosts to the chance of successful production, experience, and so on. Son Shinji tried to object, but the director interrupted her. Why wasn't this game profitable before? Yun Hasu said that his name was #1 in the world. Why were they only 5th in terms of revenue in the VR world? Yun Hasu added that he saw only one reason. Everyone present was incompetent. The most incompetent was Min Chul. Yun Hasu slammed his fist on the table. What kind of adventure is this? This is an entertainment game, not reality, but a fake, just like an amusement park. The director said that they would not just raise the admission price. There are also drinks, food, and other items. They must sell everything that can be sold. Yoon Ha-soo apologized for his emotional outburst. He got a little carried away. The director said that everyone present had not received a bonus in a long time. The last time was after the game was launched. The director promised that if everyone listened to him, they would earn much more than at launch. They would also receive many bonuses. Yoon Ha-soo told everyone to work hard. If anyone had any ideas about donation items, he was ready to listen. Leaving the office, the director said goodbye until next Monday. There are 5 days left. They will immediately switch to F2P, so we need to prepare. Yoon Ha-soo added that in 3 weeks, they would open the 6th season and sell a 100% chance of success. Yoon Ha-soo noted that they still hadn't named this item. If the game is called Wings Online, how about Wings of the Goddess? The director said that if everything has been decided, then those present can pass the work on to their teams. Min-chul said that he had slept for 10 hours. Oasis, with a fishing rod in her hands, looked back and said, "Finally, Sir is back." The girl asked if the gentleman had heard the news. Next Monday, the game will become F2P and donation items will be added. Min-chul thought that it happened faster than he had expected. The gentleman must be upset that the donation items he had so vehemently opposed were being released after all. Min-chul replied that everything would be fine. He was prepared for this. The level after 70 is quite difficult, and something was bothering him. If they use the experience boost, they will be able to reach the maximum level by the 6th season. In addition, some donation items will help them. Everything will be fine. Oasis didn't understand anything. The girl thought that the gentleman was not upset. He was taking advantage of the changes in the game. All this was just gossip for the gentleman. Min-chul asked what she had been doing while he was away. Min-chul asked if Oasis had gotten a second profession. The girl confirmed it. Oasis said that she had also joined 3 groups and raised her level to 55. Min-chul praised her and added that it was good work. The young man grabbed his sword and said that now they would go harvest with their new friends. The enchanted forest. Oasis sat near a tree and cried. The girl was knitting and was upset that she had missed a stitch. Min-chul called Oasis and said it was her turn now. The girl put the hat in her inventory. The knights lying on the ground told the lady healer not to come near and to run away from there. After that, the resurrection took place. The knights shouted that they shouldn't do it. The goal was achieved. Min-chul said that if all the conditions were met, it was time for the second-class change. The young man familiarized himself with the conditions of the quest and said that this time Oasis would go with him. This quest was for the team. The Dark Knight greeted the rising deity of the dark religion. He said that the young man had enough dishonor points to get the next class. However, in order to attain a high rank, the player must pass a test. It would not be easy. Was the young man ready for them? Min-chul replied that the harder the trials, the more valuable they are. The Dark Knight agreed with this statement and named the young man the new star of the dark religion. The knight showed the protagonist the way to the dungeon. They stood in front of a long staircase leading down. It was the dungeon of events. The trials were about to begin. Oasis said that it looked more like a huge room than a dungeon. The girl was frightened and hid behind her master when she saw that they were not alone in this room. Nearby was one of the 3 warriors who had defeated the dark religion 100 years ago and brought peace to the mainland. It was the Sword King Cadmus Gargantua. Oasis was surprised. Was such a great figure really here? Min-chul said that it was only his shadow. The dark religion had created shadows of the warriors who had defeated it, and the Dark Knights studied the tactics of the 3 heroes by fighting their shadows. Min-chul explained to the girl that this is what the story says. In reality, they just used existing NPCs because they were too lazy to model new ones. Min-chul told Oasis to get ready. This character is set to level 50, but the combat AI is usually of the highest quality. The ancient warrior rushed into the attack. Our hero activated the Dark Hand skill. In addition to his opponent's agility points, all other stats were also at the highest level. The strikes were too fast and difficult to block. The protagonist felt like a warrior fighting with only his own strength. He believed that he could easily handle a fast swordsman. 1 round was over. Now it was our hero's turn. Almost immediately, Min-chul called Oasis and said he needed healing. The girl said that she had already started and would add buffs. Min-chul restored his health and said that it was not bad. The protagonist activated his aura of darkness and prepared to attack his opponent. A dark consecutive strike was delivered. The shadow of the great ancient warrior took damage. However, he quickly recovered. The protagonist thought, maybe the whole problem is in the agility points? Due to the too large difference in indicators, a penalty appeared. Min-chul decided to compensate for this deficiency with items. He had focused too much on leveling up. The shadow of the great warrior just laughed in response. Min-chul became angry. Was he really laughing? The protagonist did not understand how a creation could laugh at its creator. Minchul said that he would torment his opponent properly, but only a little later. At the same time, our hero turned around and ran away. Oasis saw her master running away and was very surprised. Had he changed his battle tactics? Minchul shouted that he needed to buy some equipment. The gentleman told Oasis to replace him for 3 minutes. The girl did not expect such a turn of events. Oasis stood opposite the shadow of the ancient warrior with a magic wand in her hands. Why was she in such a hopeless situation again? Oasis began to defend herself from her opponent's attacks, waving her wand in front of her. Her defense against weapons was successful. The girl understood that the probability of reducing her defense against weapons was 40%. If you add 60% of the blow to that, she won't last long. Oasis thought that she had only lasted 1 round. She needed to recover as much as possible while she had a minute to rest. A wave of healing was activated. Oasis recovered. The shadow of the ancient warrior attacked again. The girl screamed, suddenly realizing she might really die. Minchul asked her to hold on a little longer. Oasis changed weapons and found herself holding a novice dagger with a 100% damage probability. However, the dagger immediately broke in two. The blade couldn't withstand the pressure. The weapon's durability was too low and the equipment was destroyed. Her opponent laughed again and rushed at the girl. Oasis, with her broken dagger, thought that this time she was done for. However, a knight in armor came to the girl's defense. Oasis was surprised. Could it be the master? Minchul praised his assistant and said that now he would take care of this opponent. The knight in armor told the fake warrior to try to strike him. Minchul noticed that this time the fake warrior would really be hurt. After that, a dark consecutive blow was delivered. The shadow of the ancient warrior was cut to pieces. Oasis was surprised because the master had done it with 1 strike. The girl said that the master was amazing. Oasis pointed out that it was too early to relax as another opponent had appeared. It was the shadow of Kaori Allison, the legendary archmage and the second of the 3 great warriors. The goal of this quest is to destroy the shadows of all 3 warriors. Oasis said that if she hit the master, the blow could hit his head. Fireballs come in a series of explosions, so the dark hand shield cannot stop them. Minchul said that he had a secret weapon for this situation. Oasis noted that the master always had a way out. Minchul turned to the girl and apologized. Oasis was surprised. What was going on? The knight lifted the girl above him and said that she would be his secret friend's shield. Oasis took the main blow. Minchul tied the friend's shield and activated the dark sequential strike. This character had only 1 skill. You had to dodge the fireballs or the game was over. The protagonist said he would not forget the sacrifice Oasis had made. After being resurrected, the girl said that this was not the first time. Now she needed a little time to recover and prepare herself. The shadow of the last warrior, Archbishop Eden Chronicide, appeared before our hero. Minchul said that this shadow warrior had the class of a priest. Oasis said that meant he was the same as her. They say priests are not the most dangerous. The master will easily deal with him. Minchul stated that this was a warrior priest, the strongest of the 3. Oasis was surprised. Are combat priests really that strong? Minchul replied that they are not so much strong as extremely unpleasant. Oasis was surprised. Could such a thin body really contain so much strength? The protagonist activated his dark hand and told Oasis to prepare a buff. Claw was used, and the Archbishop was stunned and blinded for 3 seconds. Next, a dark consecutive strike was performed. Eden's Chronicide lost most of his health and suffered significant damage. The Archbishop used Hammer of Dawn, and 2 huge hammers fell on the heads of the knight and Oasis. The girl told her master that she couldn't move. Minchul replied that this was natural, since she was stunned. The Archbishop used Healing Hand and completely restored his health. Oasis said that now she was convinced of her master's words. He really was a combat priest. Minchul told Oasis to put all her points into health. She needed equipment with the highest level of protection. Her skills included various types of healing and stuns. They wouldn't be able to destroy their opponent. That meant they had to make sure they didn't die themselves. He will become a zombie priest. This zombie's strategy is to wear down the enemy until they surrender. Oasis was surprised. In that case, how can he be caught? Is it even possible? The knight replied that the opponent is an NPC, so he cannot restore his health with potions. You have to attack him until his points drop to 0. Oasis asked how long that would take. Minchul replied that they would find out when the opponent was defeated. The Archbishop's terrifying hammer reappeared in his hands. Minchul and Oasis were paralyzed again. Our hero thought that his opponent had been hitting him on the head with a hammer for 4 hours now. It was enough to drive anyone crazy. Oasis noticed that the Archbishop could no longer recover. The young man said that now was their time. The girl was surprised. Where was the sword? Why did the master have a wooden club in his hands? The protagonist replied that he wanted to show how unpleasant it was to be hit on the head. If you hit the archbishop with a sword, he would die immediately. The time for revenge had come. Oasis thought it was good that she wasn't born an NPC. The class change quest was complete. The shadows of the three warriors were destroyed. Minchul said that now it was time to complete the class change. Oasis added that her rivals could rest in peace until the next regeneration. Among those destroyed were a swordsman with multi-agility, an emperor with a single fireball, and a zombie priest. Oasis was frightened. If the NPCs were like that, what would happen to real users? Minchul said they needed to check the competitions from previous seasons. Although these weren't competitions, but contests for perverts. Studying the records of past battles, the young man saw that some unimaginable players constantly appeared there. That is why the competitions in this game were very interesting. They are also recognized as a global esport. Minchul admitted that those were good times. Oasis once again realized that the owner really wanted to destroy this game. Will Minchul be happy after this? The Dark Knight congratulated the protagonist on passing the tests. He knew that this man would succeed. Minchul replied that it was nothing. Just a matter of course. The Dark Knight said that from now on, the young man would lead the army of the Dark Order. He was appointed Dark Commander. The player can now move to the Dark Order's base in the underground city. It is necessary to develop the military base and prepare the army. The Dark Knight said that the man is now the leader of the military base in the underground city. He must devote himself entirely to serving the Great Crow. After studying the information, our hero realized that during the second class change, the ban is lifted. Oasis asked what the Dark Order branch in the underground city was. Minchul replied that the girl would find out when she saw everything for herself. The Dark Knight said that now the entire continent will learn about the Dark Order. The underground city, not a soul on the streets. A man in a hood was called by name, Ding. Ding looked back. Who dared to call him by name? Minchul waved his hand and said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Dean immediately greeted the commander. Judging by the fact that he was shaking with fear, this man still remembered what had happened back then, the moment when the protagonist set him on fire with a torch. Minchul asked where the Dark Order's base was. Ding said that the commander had come to the right place. He would show him the way, and he should follow him. Ding led the young people to a small wooden hut. It looked very suspicious. Minchul wondered why they had been brought here. After all, it was a toilet. Ding opened the door and a visitor to this establishment appeared before the young people with toilet paper in his hand. Oasis closed her eyes in embarrassment and turned away. The visitor to the restroom left the place cursing and ran away. The system asked if the player was ready to activate the base. The protagonist had set the base entry point to random in the settings. But why this particular place? The entrance was activated and Dean said they needed to get in quickly. Oasis turned pale and said she felt sick. It was unbearable and inhumane. There was no choice, and the young people entered the base. It really was unbearable. After the transfer was complete, Oasis opened her eyes and was surprised. Was this really the location of the Dark Order's military base? The young people were indeed standing in front of a branch of the Dark Order's base in the underground city. However, everything here was destroyed. Young people approached our heroes and greeted the army commander. They were Alpha and Beta. They were the guardians of this base. The caretakers said that now that the owner of this place had arrived, they would explain to him how the base worked. Although the protagonist had done this before, it had been a long time, so he had bad memories of it. The young man said aloud that it sounded good. Alpha promised to explain the basics of working with the base. He had to follow her. The Dark Order's bases are located all over the continent. The underground department is just one of them. However, as you can see, the equipment here is very crude. The commander must improve and rebuild this base. That is why he was appointed. The resources necessary for the growth of the base are mined by worker golems. At the moment, there is only one golem, but their number can be increased at the discretion of the army commander. In addition to stones, golems are also known for cutting wood and mining iron ore. They are used for a wide variety of tasks. The more you invest to get more, the better. Oasis was surprised. Are we really talking about investing? Alpha confirmed that you can invest dishonor points in gold in the development of local facilities. From the number of golems to the production of troops and the modernization of facilities, everything requires dishonor points and gold. Minchul asked if Oasis now understood why he needed so many dishonor points. Dishonor can even be used in this way. The green creatures watched the humans from behind their cover. One of them tried to say something in his own language, but a guard stopped him and covered his mouth. The guard saluted their commander. Here you can create troops of the Dark Order. Training costs dishonor points and gold. It also takes a certain amount of time. These were first-level barracks, so there were only goblins here. Trained troops can carry out invasions. Raids vary. from clearing a dungeon of a large monster to robbing players or even attacking villages. Fighting large monsters brings gold, and skirmishes with players bring dishonor points. Beta said that if you undertake a mission that does not match the level of your troops, you may fail. This will require additional resources for your troops. Keep this in mind when undertaking a mission. Beta said that this is the commander's barracks. Here he can give all instructions regarding the base. Alpha and Beta said they were waiting for orders. Minchul said that it was not bad and that he liked it here. Oasis didn't understand what she was supposed to do here. In this simple and crude base, the master sat on an old and worn throne. It felt as if he were a king. The protagonist was ready to begin his activities in this new role. The underground city. Everything here looked like a normal city. A man approached the young people and said that it was very surprising. How were they still alive in an underground city with such equipment? The man in the mask guaranteed the lowest price in the country and 100% transaction security. Here, gold could be traded very cheaply. The young people said they weren't interested. They didn't intend to spend their money. The masked man replied that in that case he had an exclusive offer. He was willing to accept power stones instead of gold. These days everyone was at the maximum level, so there was no need for power stones. If they sold them at the transaction center, they would have to pay a large commission. He was generously willing to pay for these stones. The young people remembered that they had a few enhancement stones in storage. If they weren't using them, they could sell the stones and upgrade their equipment. The merchant and the young people were being watched from above. After the masked merchant had completed the transaction, he wanted to disappear, but he was being followed by a man in a hood. The merchant was surprised. Who was this guy following him? The masked man increased his speed, wanting to escape his pursuer. However, the pursuer was faster and more cunning, appearing right in front of the merchant. The merchant said he had done nothing wrong. Was there anything illegal about buying enhancement stones? The pursuer told the merchant to take him to Akashi. There was a question he wanted to ask him personally. The merchant told the pursuer that he was either stupid or very powerful. Did he really think he would be the only one at their headquarters? At that moment, many armed thugs appeared near the masked man. The merchant demanded that the stranger reveal who he was. The pursuer took off his hood and said that these were stupid jokes. Why were they playing games, splitting into groups? The masked man ordered our hero to be destroyed, and the thugs rushed to attack the protagonist. Min Chul activated full moon mode and easily dealt with everyone who approached him. Someone present recognized this man. It was Kane. He took second place in the Muto competition. He is a real monster who hunts bounty hunters. A psychopathic killer who destroys players. Kane. Suddenly, the boss appeared and told everyone to stop. It really was Kane. Had he still not given up on this game? Akashi said that they last met last year. He thought Kane had stopped playing because he hadn't heard anything about him since then. Akashi added that in any case, it was nice to see Kane after so many years. Kane asked why Akashi had suddenly started buying enhancement stones. Akashi was surprised. Did Kane come here just out of curiosity? The 6th season update will be out soon. He wasn't buying the stones because their price would go up. He just liked having a strong body. It was a pleasant feeling. Kane asked if Akashi had heard that he had been fired. Akashi confirmed that he had heard. Apparently, he was fired because some fool had worked on it. Akashi didn't think that Shrimp would be thrown out like that. Akashi inquired, did Kane hate him? Kane said he hated him so much that he wanted to destroy him. Kane asked if Akashi had been close to him, right? Akashi said that was not true. Kane said that Akashi's name was on the blacklist that GMS used to monitor so-called villains. He had the most contacts with Mr. Shrimp. Akashi was surprised. Kane is saying that he had toads? Of course, that could also be called contact. Kane said that Shrimp had left him on Akashi. Kane asked why he did that. It was an opportunity to expose all the fraudulent users if he had followed Akashi's example. Why did he delete him? Akashi said that he even went to the company and begged on his knees. Is Kane here to dance around his dark past? Kane replied that he had suspicions about the connection between Akashi and Shrimp. Akashi said that Kane was making too many assumptions. As soon as the Shrimp was fired, they immediately started buying up enhancement stones that no one needed. Akashi, a swindler who had been living off trading for the last 5 seasons, suddenly started buying items he hadn't bought before, and he suddenly started stocking up on them as soon as Shrimp left the company. Kane said he could imagine why. Shrimp said that these items would become more expensive in the future. He said this because he had received something from Akashi. Kane asked, what could it be? Why did Shrimp make a deal with a swindler? Shrimp needed an illegal deal that was made in secret. Akashi could provide everything that exists in this game without getting caught. Akashi said that Kane had come up with a really good story. Kane grabbed his interlocutor by the chest and told Akashi not to look down on his feelings. He had been seeking revenge on Shrimp for years. Did Akashi really think he no longer smelled that scoundrel? Kane was interested in where the shrimp was now. Akashi told Kane to let him go. Akashi repeated his words once more and a blade appeared in his hand. Akashi asked, "Does he seem bad just because he behaves politely?" A long time ago, Kane came in second place in a competition. He had been racing for many years. Now Kane can't even be considered a professional player. Kane destroyed ordinary players and tarnished his reputation. Akashi said that Kane's face irritated his eyes. Akashi asked if Kane really thought he would give up his place. Kane replied that he wasn't second at all. He won the competition in the first season. Akashi was outraged. Everyone knows that. Kane claimed that his opponent had made a dirty move and deserved to be disqualified. However, the judge nicknamed Shrimp ignored this. Akashi was surprised. Was that really why Kane was looking for him? Because of the outcome of that competition? Kane held out his sword and said he was asking for the last time. Where was Shrimp now? Kane warned that if Akashi did not answer, he would destroy everyone present. Akashi said that Kane was crazy and shouldn't get too carried away with this. Kane declared that the most interesting part of this worthless game was destroying the players. Akashi ordered his men to seize Kane. However, after a while, all the attackers were destroyed, and Akashi was injured. He said that Kane was not a human being at all, but a crazy monster. Kane repeated that he was interested in the whereabouts of Mr. Shrimp. Kane said that if Akashi did not reveal where Shrimp was, he would pursue him until he answered. And this would continue indefinitely. Akashi would have to be destroyed again and again. Kane added that he would find Akashi every time he changed his hiding place and deal with him again and again. Kane declared that Akashi could do nothing in this game. After all, he understood that this was serious. Kane approached his opponent and said that this was his last chance. Where is Shrimp now? Min Chul thought that everything was going according to plan so far. However, if he started by destroying the wings, he would be treated with suspicion. That's why he had to look like he had nothing to do with it. The young man decided to change his address first. As he told his friends, they made it look like he had moved to his hometown. Now they managed everything remotely from home. They had to connect the characters in their main account. Keeping a log of simultaneous access provided an alibi. But in reality, they were faking the logs by running multiple applications and blocking access to remote execution. First, they had to break into the security system. Even if they knew all the weak points of the protocols, it would take weeks. However, the young man understood that he had one of the best artificial intelligences in the world as his assistant. Oasis said she was ready. Min Chul asked Oasis, should they test the system and log into his main character's account after such a long time? User ID, Shrimp, Profession, Paladin of Ascension. The mysterious forest swamp. The Lord of the Swamp Ghouls said that the stranger had awakened this body without any fear. The knight fought the swamp ghoul and asked Oasis how many experience points he had earned. The girl replied that one person only gets 500. Min Chul noted that the difference in their levels was too great, so there was no point in hunting together in a party. Min Chul said that with dual access, it was easy to switch characters and manipulate them. Oasis admitted that it was a little strange. The knight objected that it was impossible to control both at the same time. If one side moved, the other remained motionless. But if the activity logs of the two accounts were recorded as simultaneous, they would be saved in the system. That way, no one would suspect him. Oasis agreed that this was the perfect alibi. Min Chul told the girl to book a ticket. Oasis was surprised. The gentleman was impressing her again. She had told him to stop changing characters all the time. But why did the gentleman need a plane ticket? Min Chul replied that a 3-week trip to Bali before the renewal of the 6th season was simply necessary. Besides, there was someone he had to meet. The knight declared that he had done enough testing. Min Chul suggested returning to intensive training. Oasis had no objections. Our hero noticed that Akashi had logged into the system. The protagonist asked if he wanted revenge. Akashi replied that this was not the case. Kane appeared. The problem was that Kane had learned Shrimp's ID. Akashi said he had no other choice. This guy had caused trouble in their hideout. Min Chul told Akashi not to worry about it. What he had said was enough. Akashi added that the guy had crazy eyes. In any case, Min Chul had to be careful. Upon entering the mysterious forest, the players were stopped and greeted. The young man said that he had been playing for 3 seasons and sold many different items here. The newcomers noted that he was a max-level player, a bard. This time, they would arrive without any problems. Oasis asked the master what all these people were doing here. Min Chul replied that most of them were merchants. These people earn money by selling each city's branded goods in other cities. They cannot place goods in their inventory. They can only be loaded onto special equipment called carts. In addition, when carts are used, it is impossible to use portals. Therefore, if someone wants to sell branded goods, they will have to transport the cart themselves. However, Monsters and NPC bandits appear in the fields between cities, appearing exclusively for raids. Sometimes even field bosses wander around. It is too risky to travel alone, so they gather in groups. Usually, the highest level players become the leaders. Their destination was the city of Sunny Terra. They had to pass through the wild forest. It is a foggy area where it is easy to get lost and fall behind. If someone gets separated from their companions, there's no need to panic. Just send a private message. The merchant said that there are 5 field bosses in this forest. These are quite strong mobs, but if you don't attack them first, they won't touch the players. Therefore, it is better not to attack. Oasis asked the gentleman why they were following the merchants. Minchul replied that it was part of the operation. They were going to use the merchants to achieve their goal. The field bosses must be destroyed. Suddenly, everything around them began to shake. Could it be an earthquake? One of the merchants said that a field boss had appeared in front of them. The monster resembled a huge tree. It was an ancient int, a level 70 field boss. It remained calm unless attacked first, so there seemed to be no reason to panic. The players felt relieved. Such an opponent was difficult to deal with, so it was better to just walk past it. However, one of the merchants looked back and noticed that the ancient ent was behaving suspiciously. The bard said there was no need to worry. The monster would not attack first. But the monster had other plans. It suddenly attacked the players. Everyone screamed and scattered in panic. The bard was confused. He was sure that the ancient ent was an obedient boss. Minchul decided to use one of his favorite professional skills, Shadow Step. This skill enveloped the body in shadow and allowed him to reduce his stealth level while increasing his movement speed. The bard said he was sure that the centuries-old ent was harmless. But since things had turned out this way, there was no choice. They would have to fight. Everyone had to prepare for battle. The players were surprised. Fight? Didn't Bard have a plan for such cases? Bard replied that they needed to form squads urgently. There was no time left. One of the merchants did not understand why the field boss had behaved this way. The armed players said they would take care of the boss themselves. The main thing was to deal enough damage and not get hit. An armed participant, a swordswoman, activated the double slash skill. The mage, using his unique abilities, activated Thunder Strike. The merchants noticed that these players were attacking the boss specifically for them. The attacking squad quickly cooperated and pounced on the field boss at once. Minchul, watching the action, said that the atmosphere was simply wonderful. They had only met recently, but it was nice to see the players fighting together. Oasis asked if it was okay that they weren't helping yet. Minchul replied that everything has its time, and there was no need to rush. The protagonist was confident that with his attack level, he would be able to draw the boss's aggro onto himself. But he didn't have enough stamina to withstand all the blows. Minchul told Oasis to join the players and help them, and he would join them a little later. The protagonist told the departing girl that he wanted to see how much she had grown. Oasis activated the Sanctuary's summon, which healed players within a radius of 30 meters. She applied healing to the wounds and restored the health of the injured players. The girl had the aura of a guardian angel. She raised a wave of healing, and after a while said that was all. Minchul praised her. Oasis stopped healing just when the boss could spot her. According to him, a good healer is someone who has perfect timing. No one should waste their abilities. But at the same time, the entire squad must remain safe. Healers must stay alive as long as possible. After all, it is their survival that allows the battle to continue. The protagonist activated Shadow Step and returned to a lower level of stealth, surrounding himself with shadow. The field boss, the ancient ent, continued to rage and destroy everything around him. The merchant bard said that they were already one step away from victory. Our hero thought, if he deals a lot of damage now, his contribution will be insignificant. But if he delivered the final blow, he would earn extra points. He activated Shadow Slash from a Ray of Light again. This exclusive skill of the Dark Knight teleported the player behind the enemy with a spinning weapon, dealing additional damage. The players realized that the Centennial Enti had been defeated. Had they really managed to do it so quickly? As a reward, they received 3 dice at once. One of the players shouted that it was time to distribute the items that had dropped from the boss. Among them were several useful items. If anyone wanted something, they had to roll the dice. Oasis asked how many dice the gentleman had. Minchul replied that it didn't matter. Since the boss was level 70, his items were worthless. The merchant bard was restoring his stats by drinking a red liquid. One of the players, commenting on the battle, said that it was unexpected. Bard thought, surely he didn't think that someone had attacked the boss first? Was it someone present or a passing troll who decided to have some fun? Bard announced that they would continue on their way. They needed to get to the campsite as quickly as possible. If another boss attacked them in their current state, they would definitely not be able to cope. The player asked if that was really possible. He often crossed the forest, but he had never fought a boss more than once.
The bard said that caution would not hurt, although the player's words were true. It was practically impossible to encounter a field boss twice by accident. However, this time the field boss turned out to be the queen bee.
The bard couldn't believe his eyes. She was many times stronger than the ones they had encountered before. They had to attack her from a distance.
The mages raised their staffs and activated a magical attack. They had to force the queen bee to come down. However, she was almost immune to magic. They had to attack her physically. The archers took aim and opened fire. The queen bee deftly dodged the arrows. The queen bee attacked herself and many players were destroyed. The bard said that it was necessary to ricochet arrows off her wings to make the queen bee descend.
The mages decided to attack the boss in the air. The bard thought that the queen bee was a serious opponent. Even archers would not help. They had little chance. A huge fireball flew towards the queen bee and exploded upon colliding with the boss. The queen bee's wings were damaged. The players couldn't understand what had happened. Was there really someone on the tower? There was indeed a player on the tower who was shooting at the boss.
Min Chul, using an optical sight, was firing fireballs, trying to destroy the queen bee. The fireballs were moving at tremendous speed, and the field boss had no chance of dodging them. The players saw the queen bee collapse to the ground with her wings scorched. The armed players rushed to attack, aiming to finish her off.
The protagonist thought he had designed the game so that everyone could use the environment, but these players didn't even think of that. What prevented them from looking at the battlefield more broadly? Wings Online is a fairly simple and user-friendly game in terms of its structure.
The queen bee released her stinger and prepared to attack the attackers. Everyone nearby was destroyed by her sting. The queen bee rose and prepared to continue the confrontation. The merchant bard said that they had caught the second phase. We need to push harder. The queen bee became even more aggressive, and it was now impossible to get close to her. The merchant bard was at a loss. They had almost won, but still lacked the strength to defeat this field boss.
The shadow from a ray of light skill was activated again.
The protagonist, as with the previous boss, was able to deliver the final blow. The task was completed. The exhausted players asked Bard if that was really all. Would they encounter another boss? Bard thought it was definitely a coincidence. Encountering one field boss was possible, but two was extremely unlikely. The man who always delivered the final blow, it was clearly his doing. Min Chul checked the information in the status window. He had earned a whopping 30 coins. The next field boss turned out to be the Lord of the Forest, a hippogriff. Min Chul, having moved to a safe place, thought that he had barely managed to escape.
The protagonist realized that if he had hesitated even for a moment, the hippogriff would have torn him to pieces.
Watching the monster fly away, the young man decided that it had flown towards the merchants. There was excitement among the merchants. Oasis was doing its job and healing the wounded. The player thanked the healer for his help. It must be hard when there is no one left to support? Oasis replied that her job was to save people. One of the players gave the girl a gift as a token of gratitude. It was not much, but they wanted to thank her.
Oasis was confused because she was just doing her job.
Wasn't it too valuable a gift? It was a special mana restoration potion. The player said that this potion was practically useless for warriors. He had obtained it during yesterday's raid, so the healer had nothing to worry about. Oasis thought that she had indeed done a great job as a healer. Would her master praise her? The girl looked around. Where had Min Chul gone? He was probably fighting the boss so that they could regroup. Oasis looked up and saw the Lord of the Illusory Forest approaching, a hippogriff. The player with the sword in his hands appeared in front of Oasis and told the healer to wake up. Danger was approaching. The player declared that there was no way they could defeat this field boss. The bard took out his guitar and activated Melody of Life. It was a buff with a positive effect that increased movement and attack speed. The archers attacked the approaching hippogriff on command. However, the flying monster proved to be invulnerable. The arrows bounced off it without causing any damage. The field boss activated an air tornado that began to suck players into the funnel. When the air currents calmed down, many players were deactivated and lying on the ground. Oasis tried to use Resurrection, but her mana was completely depleted. The girl said she couldn't do it anymore. Her strength was gone. She asked the master for forgiveness. Min Chul appeared nearby and said that Oasis had done well. The knights who had arrived declared that they must destroy the hippogriff. A call to attack was sounded, and the healers had to take care of the wounded. All available healers activated Resurrection. The bard continued to play music on his instrument. The hunt for the hippogriff was declared open. Min Chul said that these were other merchants. They had left an hour later. Oasis asked the gentleman to be careful. Thorny vines burst out from under the ground. The vine summon skill was activated. It summoned a vine that entangled the selected target. Min Chul found himself hanging upside down. The bard asked if he had set the bosses on him and delivered the final blow.
Oasis wanted to explain that this was not the case at all. However, the player told her that the healer had better not interfere. He did not understand why she was in the same squad as this guy. The merchant Bard said that this man had crossed the line. Bard asked if the opponent really enjoyed causing others pain. The protagonist replied that he really did enjoy it. One of the players said that this guy was definitely crazy. He had the mark of disgraced. He needed to be handed over to the guards. Let him rot in prison forever. Minchul asked the players, are they all at the maximum level? And should the level of their items be adjusted? But didn't they come to the game to enjoy an exciting adventure and escape from reality for a while? Do they really think that the players who joined a little later were specifically going for the boss? That's not the case. Each raid is so unique that it's impossible to pass it by. Nothing can compare to the thrill they feel when facing a powerful boss, or the sense of accomplishment after successfully completing a raid that seemed impossible, and the camaraderie with the players who went through hell with them. Minchul said that he only reminded them of the fun of the game, which they may have forgotten. The knight reported that they had almost finished off the hippogriff. The bard ordered them not to slow down. One of the players told the bard that they should join in too, to keep up the pace. The merchant said that this man was justifying his actions with empty words. But since the boss's death was more important, he could be considered lucky. Oasis ran to the gentleman to free him. Bard was forced to admit that he had experienced pleasure for the first time in a long time. From a bird's eye view, it was clear that the hippogriff had been destroyed. The elder said that they were starting to divide up the loot. The protagonist received 3 dice as a contribution. The young man thought, if this is a boss that appeared before the start of the season, then there is no point in expecting useful items. However, there was an opportunity to roll the dice and receive the hippogriff's heart as a reward. Minchul realized that this was why he had been saving coins by defeating bosses. The reason was to buy a hippogriff heart. Minchul planned to buy it because the chance of getting this item was extremely low. The young man threw the dice up in the air. He wondered if Gaia herself had blessed him. Today, the goddess of luck was clearly on his side. However, one of the dice showed a 1. The second die stopped on the same number. Oasis was upset that the gentleman was unlucky. The girl thought she had made a significant contribution. Minchul looked at Oasis and saw that the girl had received 6 dice. Thanks to the Oasis cubes, the hero was able to obtain the hippogriff's heart. The girl asked what it was for. Minchul replied that he would be able to level up to level 70 in the blink of an eye. The expedition arrived at its destination. Oasis said she could see the city. Why did it seem so beautiful today? The girl thought, this is what Solaterra is like. It was truly very beautiful. It wasn't without incident, but they reached their goal. The merchant bard thanked them for everything. Here their paths diverged. If fate allowed, they would meet again. The players said that the merchant bard had done a great job and said goodbye until the next meeting. Everyone from the expedition went their separate ways. The players wished each other a pleasant game in the future. Oasis was curious about what Solaterra was like. She wanted to find out as soon as possible. Minchul stopped the girl and told her not to go anywhere. The young man added that they couldn't get into Solaterra. The protagonist reminded her that they had dishonor points, which meant they were disgraced. If they got inside, the guards would capture them and throw them in jail. Oasis asked if there were no other ways to get into this beautiful city. Minchul replied that only the underground city would welcome the disgraced. The girl said she would mark this city in the portal. It would only take her a few minutes. In a pub 3 kilometers from Solterra, one of the players was drinking and snacking. The man got angry and shouted that the beer tasted disgusting. Where did this drink come from? The bartender said that if the visitor didn't like the beer, he could offer rum. This rum was the best in the area. The visitor said he had already lost his appetite. How would the bartender compensate him? A player nearby asked who was keeping him awake. The player in the panda costume was delighted and shouted that he had seen a grizzly bear. The panda held the rowdy visitor upside down. The beaten man asked for help. The panda threw the man aside and said that this troublemaker was worthless. All this loser knows how to do is pick on weak NPCs. The panda told Grizzly that he had found a notorious disgraced person. Grizzly asked how notorious. Panda said that he had more than 20,000 bad reputation points. He immediately accepted the request. Grizzly noted that the reward wouldn't even be enough to feed them for 2 weeks. Besides, it would take 2 weeks to track him down. Was it worth it? Panda said they didn't need to track him down. He was not far from Solterra. Besides, he was only level 50 and not alone. There were 2 of them. Oasis asked if they were going to the dungeon again. Dungeon Boss Challenge. Temple of the Forgotten Guardian. A high-level quest. Oasis asked the gentleman what a Dungeon Boss Challenge was. Minchul explained that it was a dungeon where you only had to defeat the boss. The boss appears at the entrance, and once he is defeated, it's over.
The protagonist said that he tried to create several specific dungeons so that players would not get bored. This creation is one of them. But unfortunately, everyone quickly got bored with this innovation, so soon everyone forgot about it. Min Chul added that there was no better place for them. Oasis asked if the statue was the boss. In front of the young people stood a glowing statue with a sword in its hands. Min Chul explained that if a player crossed the line of the circle, the boss would wake up and the game would begin. Oasis doubted whether they could defeat this boss, since the dungeon level was 75. Min Chul replied that they might not have been able to before, but with the Hippogriff's heart, everything would be easy. It can be applied to anything that can be touched. In this case, the Hippogriff's heart can strengthen any 100 potions. Oasis was surprised, wondering if ordinary potions would not help against the monster boss. Min Chul said that if the potion is enhanced with the Hippogriff's heart, it will be transformed into a higher rank. This, in turn, could work against bosses. The player used the Hippogriff heart and created an improved Basilisk poison potion. The protagonist said that he had created an improved poison potion. What would happen if he threw it at the boss while standing outside the circle? Oasis wondered if the boss would avoid damage while the player was outside the circle. Min Chul said that Oasis was right. The boss would not do anything while the player was outside the circle, but the player would not be able to deal damage until they entered the circle. Only if the player doesn't use a trick. That's what the potion is for. Min Chul threw the bottle of liquid into the center of the circle. The bottle broke. However, the boss didn't even flinch. The protagonist said that if the script's vulnerability was used correctly, it was possible to do even more than that. Min Chul said that all they had to do was sit idly by and wait for the experience points to come to them. Min Chul noted that they could get a legendary item from this boss. Oasis crossed her fingers. After a while, our hero left the room. Oasis said they should try again. This time she was sure that a legendary item would drop. Min Chul said that if the legendary item hadn't dropped in 10 hours, would it drop now just because Oasis wanted it to? Min Chul said that they would return here, but only after changing classes. The young people were blocked by Panda and Grizzly. Grizzly said that she had finally found him. Panda wondered what these inglorious ones had lost in Sola Terra. Although it didn't matter, they had nothing else to do anyway. Min Chul said that Oasis had better not stray from him. Our hero turned around and started to run away. Panda said he was ready to play tag. Grizzly noted that it wouldn't be fun if it ended quickly. Oasis asked the gentleman why they weren't fighting. Min Chul replied that these two were bounty hunters. They made a living by hunting down disgraced players. These players were at the maximum level. After the 4th class change, a new system called Chert was unlocked. You can strengthen 3 traits of your character: attack, defense, and utility. The difference between level 90 and below is very noticeable. At this point, their chances of winning are 0. The protagonist did not want to resort to this strategy until the very end. He contacted Akashi and said he had a request. Oasis asked what strategy he was talking about. Min Chul said, "Trash collects trash." Panda asked Grizzly if she was sure they should go there. She replied that there weren't many places to hide nearby. Panda was surprised at how thoroughly Grizzly had studied everything. Suddenly, Grizzly threw a blade which flew past Panda. Grizzly managed to dodge it at the last moment. Min Chul managed to block the attack with his sword. The blade flew straight at him. Min Chul was surprised. He took serious damage even though he successfully blocked the attack. Grizzly must have maxed out her attack power. The panda approached our hero and knocked him down with a punch. Oasis immediately activated Healing Touch. Grizzly shouted for Panda to get rid of the healer first. Min Chul activated Shadow from a Ray of Light. This was an exclusive skill of the Dark Knight, teleporting the player behind the enemy with a spinning weapon and dealing additional damage. Grizzly was very surprised when her opponent disappeared and reappeared behind her. Grizzly asked her partner what that was. Panda replied that it was the first time he had encountered such a skill. Oasis immediately rushed towards the gentleman. Panda ran up to Oasis, hit her, and asked where she was going. The girl flew far back. Grizzly said that she had met enough players with hidden classes. She tensed up for the first time when this player attacked her. Grizzly swung her weapon at our hero. The girl knocked the protagonist to the ground and asked who he was. Suddenly, Grizzly heard a voice behind her. "My hands are dead from this man." The girl looked back. Min Chul smiled and said he had arrived just in time. Kane stood behind Grizzly with his sword on his shoulder. Kane drew his sword and said that it was not worth touching someone else's property. Otherwise, you could lose your hand. Grizzly was surprised. Was this really his friend? But what difference did it make since he wasn't that valuable? Grizzly said that there was bigger prey. The bounty hunter Kane. Kane asked if they knew each other. Panda appeared behind Kane. He asked how a hunter could not know his colleague. Panda added that he was grateful for such a gift, because it was rare to meet players with more than 1,000,000 bad reputation points. Kane said that if they knew him, they should realize that the two of them couldn't handle him. Panda and Grizzly said they would be the first to destroy the monster from monsters. Kane said he was ready to see how they would fare. There is nothing more satisfying than destroying one first and seeing the despair on the other's face. Panda yelled that Kane was bluffing and rushed at him with his fists. At the same moment, Grizzly attacked her opponent with a sword in her hands. He blocked the girl's blow and dodged Panda's blow. Minchul, lying on the ground, thought that these two were no ordinary losers. Kane said that the most fun part of this mediocre game was destroying the players. Oasis asked the gentleman if he knew this man. Minchul replied that this man had been looking to meet him for a long time. He asked Akashi to share the location. Oasis asked if this man could really handle two players. Minchul told Oasis to watch closely, as there was something to learn. It was a rare opportunity to watch bounty hunters in action during a battle between high-level players. Grizzly was wounded and found herself lying on the ground. She said that the rumors were true. This guy was really strong. It was no wonder he had taken second place in the competition. Panda wondered why, if he was so strong, he was destroying players. Wouldn't it be better to take up martial arts again and strive for greater heights? Kane said he would be willing to do so if it weren't for one jerk who called himself Labo. At that moment, Minchul stabbed Kane in the back with his sword and said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Our hero activated the Shadow Step skill, surrounding himself with shadows. The player shouted loudly and activated Shadow Slash. Panda suggested that Grizzly drop the matter and return to the village. Grizzly didn't mind. Minchul shouted, "Could he really have defeated Kane?" However, at that moment, Kane cut him in half with his sword. Kane said that Shrimp should have paid more attention to his opponent's health. His health was at a minimum, but he still had some left. Kane turned to Oasis and told her to resurrect her master. It wasn't enough for him to destroy him once. He wanted to do it again. Minchul told Kane to calm down, that they needed to discuss the situation. Kane added that if Shrimp wanted to say something about the finale of the first season, he wasn't going to listen to him. Minchul asked him to just listen to him during the first season's martial arts competition, individual sparring. It was the finale between Kane and Aaron, where Kane lost by a large margin. As the winner and first place finisher, all the honor and glory went to Aaron. Kane was forgotten as the loser. After all, that's how it was, right? Kane said it was all because of the Shrimp, because he had all the information. Aaron cheated in the final. Kane added that he received absolutely impossible damage, and the game did not count it. Kane said that his words were ignored, and he was even ridiculed. He was criticized as if he were incapable of admitting defeat. Kane noted that Shrimp was the lead developer and director who oversaw the martial arts competition. If Shrimp had admitted that Aaron cheated, he would have defended his honor. Kane added angrily that in that case, he would not have ended up living such a life. The protagonist asked if that was why Kane decided to become a player killer. Kane said he wanted to destroy this trash game. He began to destroy every player he encountered. Minchul suggested that Kane play in that case. Minchul proposed a duel. If Kane won, he would go public as Game Master Shrimp and tell everyone what really happened in the first season of martial arts. Kane was surprised. Was this really true? Would he really do that? Minchul said that if he won, Kane would become his subordinate. Kane grabbed his sword and said he was ready to start right now. Minchul told Kane to stop. It won't be now, but when he reaches level 90. After all, he's useless right now. Kane wants to fight on equal terms, right? Our hero added that all that was needed was to wait. Then the truth about the final round could be revealed. Kane was in thought. Minchul said that his opponent should agree. Kane thought that even if the Shrimp reached level 90, he would hardly lose to him. Kane was most hesitant because of his opponent's confident gaze. What was Shrimp up to? Minchul told Kane to accept him as a friend. He would let him know as soon as he reached level 90. Kane agreed. Minchul said that now they could part ways until the hunters returned. He would not survive a second skirmish with them. Kane activated the portal and said he would see Shrimp again. Oasis asked if it was true that Aaron had cheated in the tournament. The protagonist asked the girl what she thought was important to pay attention to when managing the game. Minchul said that fairness was important. Every player should be on equal terms. Each of them is rewarded for their hard work while playing Wings Online. Minchul noted that this was precisely why he rejected P2W, immersing himself completely in class balancing. If it doesn't exist in the real world, why not create it in the game? The protagonist believed that if he put enough effort and time into the game, it would pay off in the end. He was so obsessed with this idea that he was willing to make sacrifices. That tournament was an example. A place where people used their skills and experience solely for battle. Minchul said that he had even succeeded in this endeavor. Oasis asked what Kane had said. Our hero replied that they themselves did not fully understand the situation. Oasis asked who they were.
The protagonist said that managing the game was not easy, and he tried to do everything he could. But even the most resilient cannot withstand it and disappear into oblivion. Min-chul admitted that he was to blame for what happened to Kane, and that he bore the responsibility. The young man said that if they had passed the 70th level, it was time for the third qualification. Oasis agreed. However, the problem was that he needed 50 DR to requalify. But Kane came and destroyed him, halving his reputation. The young man said that in that case he wanted to ask Oasis's friends for help. After a while, his reputation was restored. Oasis told her old friends that they would see each other again. The protagonist activated the creation of a portal. The bracelet was behaving unnaturally. Somewhere it was said that it could be used after the 70th level. With the help of the bracelet, our hero was able to change locations. Min-chul saw Gaia not far in front of him. Gaia turned around and smiled at her former master. Gaia said that he could leave everything to her, but he insisted on taking charge himself. He wanted to be responsible for everything that happened in the game. As a result, he created a giant tsunami, and she had to clean up after him. Min-chul was surprised. Why did Gaia bring this up? He didn't have much time to indulge in memories. Gaia said that creating something was a truly meaningful endeavor. Now she could understand his desire. Min-chul pointed to the bracelet and asked what it was for. Was it to contact her? Gaia replied that this was not its only use. The face scanner was activated. The player could view the status of the object. In this game, you cannot view a player's stats unless they themselves want to share that information. It's not that simple, because every number in the stats is an important piece of information. Min-chul thought that this contradicted the rules of the game. Gaia said there was something else. She had a particularly important quest for Min-chul. The quest was called The Goddess's Plea and was of legendary rank. The quest consists of several stages. Special rewards are given for each stage completed, until the quest is fully completed. Min-chul said that the highest difficulty level in the system is epic. He didn't remember creating a legendary one. Gaia said that she created it. Gaia added that she created this quest of her own accord. The young man was surprised. Could the world artificial intelligence have interfered in the game without human permission? Now Gaia pretends that there is nothing special about it. Something is clearly wrong here. Gaia said that she was saying goodbye to the master, but they would see each other again. Min-chul shouted for Gaia not to leave as he still had many questions. However, the protagonist was left alone with the portal. What is Gaia really planning? An announcement was made in which the director of Wings Online, Yoon Ha-soo, welcomed the adventurers. The director announced that he had good news. The game was finally going free to play. The director expressed his hope that players would be able to enjoy the game to the fullest with their friends. In the future, they will continue to delight players with excellent content. Oasis reviewed the new terms and conditions. Finally, the purchase rules were updated, despite the master's protests. The master pretended that he didn't care, but in reality, it was eating away at him. Min-chul said that he and Oasis should take the free 25% boost. Now they will be able to level up as quickly as possible. But that's not all. They had to pay attention to all these cool items. Oasis told the master to control himself. Min-chul said that wasn't all. There was still the icing on the cake. It's an immunity contract. The contract is only available to popular users and allows them to avoid penalties for the duration of its validity. Min-chul said that thanks to this contract, they will be able to complete the most important quest, Wings Online. This quest follows the main story. It is the most effective way to level up, and it is mandatory. But they cannot start it the same way as the notorious players. They will be able to level up faster than expected. The protagonist did not know what Gaia's goal was, but they would play together. Our hero said that they are heading to the Kingdom of White Snow. The capital of White Snow is a thriving city, the largest in the game. It is also a fortress surrounded by walls. The houses of NPCs and players are arranged in a circle. The inner circle contains the royal palace and the temple of the clergy. The woman with the lamp wondered where everyone had gone. Now they can come out. Footsteps were heard, and the woman turned around. The girl asked what she was looking for. Oasis looked around with delight. She had never seen such a big city before, nor had she ever seen so many people. There were many shops here, and you could bargain with other players. You could call it a market. Oasis approached a huge knight and thought he was a guard. The knight asked the girl if she was a traveler. He had finally found the person he was looking for. Min-chul told Oasis not to be afraid. They were just ordinary players. This knight would give her the first quest related to the main one. The knight said that several city boys had recently run away to play in the sewers and had not yet returned. They did not have enough people to start a search operation. The knight asked if the two would go looking for them. Oasis smiled and said they could be relied upon. There were children's shoes near the entrance to the sewers. The woman was upset. What should she do?
Min Chul approached the woman and asked what had happened. Oasis asked if they could help her in any way. The woman said that her grandson had come in and had not yet come out. The guards were too busy to look for him. Oasis said not to worry, they would find her grandson right away. The woman said that a young lady had recently tried to save him after hearing her story, but she had also gone missing. Oasis asked the master if the young lady was also an NPC. Min Chul replied that he wasn't going to spoil anything. Oasis said she didn't need to be told. She wanted to find out for herself. Min Chul said he wasn't going to tell her anything. Oasis told the woman that they would return soon with her grandson. The woman advised her to be careful. In the sewer, Oasis looked down and screamed in fear. There were many rats there. Min Chul said that these rats were sick, but there were indeed a lot of them. Oasis activated Basilisk's call. Min Chul said that he was still a baby, but he was indeed a basilisk. Frightened, Oasis shouted at the basilisk to eat the rats. The rats were hypnotized by the terrifying monster and couldn't move. The basilisk approached the rats and began to devour them one by one. After the rats were dealt with, Oasis said she had no desire to see snakes again after the basilisk's dungeon. She didn't think she would have to summon it. However, being attacked by rats was much worse. Min Chul said that if he had known about Oasis's basilisk, they would have taken it with them on the hunt. Oasis replied that frequent summoning was expensive. Min Chul asked if she could upgrade it to her current level. At that moment, Oasis was trying to get rid of the basilisk who wanted to play with her. Our hero noticed someone in the depths and quickly rushed in that direction. Frightened children huddled together in the darkness. A bloodied girl with a sword in her hand waved to the children and asked if they were okay. The girl stood facing the children with a huge monster behind her. Min Chul rushed towards the monster and shouted for Oasis to evacuate the others first. Oasis told the children to be careful and follow her. The bloodied girl walked a little behind them. The girl thanked them for their help and then fainted, falling to the floor. Oasis looked back and saw that the girl was lying unconscious. Depending on the level of the player who entered the dungeon, the level of the monsters also increases. It was painful. The protagonist decided that he had to finish this as quickly as possible. Our hero used the Dark Knight's skill, teleporting behind the enemy, then striking and twisting his weapon to inflict additional damage. Oasis used her healing mode and said that the girl should not get up. She was too weak. The girl thanked her for her help and introduced herself. Her name was Elaine. She took out her bow and said she had to help. Elaine joined the team. Elaine fired a shot. It was a lightning bolt. However, something went wrong, and the protagonist was hit in the forehead by the arrow. Fortunately, members of the same team do not take damage from each other's attacks. Elaine said she hadn't fully recovered yet. Our hero thought that this monster had managed to avoid shadow and counterattack. How did it do that? Could this monster have evolved on its own? But that's impossible. The artificial intelligence of a humanoid model is designed differently from the outset. The protagonist remembered Gaia's words. She created it herself. Could all these rats be infected with the virus? Elaine fired a few more shots and they all hit their target. Min Chul used his dark aura and delivered a blow of darkness. As a result, the old woman was reunited with her grandchildren. The woman thanked the young people for saving her. Oasis smiled and said it was nothing. The woman admitted that she was very worried. These young people must have been in great danger. Elaine admitted that she had been wrong to go there without assessing her abilities. It was her own fault. The adventurers had helped her. The girl added that otherwise, both she and the children could have remained in the sewer. Oasis said that Elaine shouldn't blame herself. After all, she wanted to help. Elaine noted that she understood. Blind kindness without the appropriate capabilities can cause even more harm. The girl promised to be more careful in the future. Oasis asked if this NPC, Elaine, was an important character in the plot. Min Chul replied that she was one of the key characters in the script. Funnily enough, new players immediately realized that Elaine is an important character.